everyone! Goodness knows what's happening to my hair. Let's forget about that for a second. It's come back from down under and it's got even weirder. Yeah, it's like I managed to go through the whole way through Australia and not get sunburn, but then I go to Chalk Valley in the UK and I managed to get sunburn. It's just a skill. It's a skill. I do say this. Right, so, hello John Shea, hello Carl Magasbeck, hello Team Locker, hello Byron Newman, hello Makuch, hello Tanavaka. The manic fluffy period when I returned home, I don't think it's quite yet over. Hello Jack Ray, thank you. Mark Harkness, thank you. Darius Ratsky, Stephen Richards, hello. NHT7040, hello. History Vanguard, hello. Debrook, hello. Blackburn Maximus, hello. Sonic Nero, hello. Matthew Meek, hello. Andreas Gallardo Garcia, hello. Byron Newman, thank you. Hello. And Timmy Lockham, hello. Hello Yosfunk, hello DG40, hello Peter Dawson, hello Malaga, hello David Goulding. Hello everyone. Right on. I have a bottle of Iron Brew because I thought I might need it tonight. I do not think I will get through all these books today. The questions are going live tomorrow because people have kept adding questions. So, basically, if you add a question to the July, it's got a chance of going in the vote. Because as we all know, we're limited to an extent by the sheer number that Patreon will allow me. If I can find a voting system which would be secure and would allow me more options, I would employ it. But so far, my attempts to use what's it called? Da Monkey haven't worked out. It's the one which you can send SurveyMonkey. Yeah, SurveyMonkey. Haven't worked out really for making it a secure system which could be patrons only. It just was too shareable. I'm gonna have to have a long conversation with Gareth, and between him and me, we might be able to work something out. But yeah, so basically, if you haven't added your questions yet for July, you have till, let's say, midnight tonight UK time, because I will get to them at some point. Tomorrow they will go live, and it'll be done and up and live, and everyone will vote, and we will have the vote will have to be people have heard to vote over next week for what we do. Hello Blasky, hello Stafford. Ooh. The Kangaroo Assassins were very friendly actually. I had a lot of fun with them. However, let's see. Okay. This is one of the books I've got from Australia. Okay. This was only $14, which for those who don't realise it, in UK money is about £8. When I was looking at buying a copy in the UK for about 10, I went, thank you, I will pick that up. And probably shouldn't admit this, but on the list of stuff they gave me at Heathrow, it didn't include books as declarable items. So they said, do you have any of these items to declare? I went, nothing on that list. And I thought, well, I'll ask the guy or guy or girl or whoever the person is when I walk past them, if they want to check them, because I'm actually bringing in a second suitcase, because I only took one suitcase and one backpack out with me to Australia. I brought her back 2 suitcases and a backpack. I'd actually paid with Singapore Airlines for an extra 15 kilograms. Do not ask me how much that worked out as. And had to admit that both my suitcases were overweight for their size. And my backpack was. But they didn't notice my backpack was, so I got through. Anyway, leaving that to one side, I had technically paid for all the weight I was taking. That's the thing. It's just they have a weight allowance per size of case thingamajig going on in the airport, Perth airport, and they basically said I was overweight for them. But leaving that on one side, a lot of books have come home. It would be odd to get booked for book smuggling, yes, it would. It'd be fun, but it'd be odd. Right then, I'm also going to add the things I acquired at Chalk Valley to the list of books we're going to go through over the next, I think it could be 3 weeks. So this came from Chalk Valley, Dreadnought by Robert K. Massey. I finally found a decent paperback copy again. Jutland by Nigel Steele and Peter Hart. Looks fairly good. I'm fairly sure there's another book in it. Yes. Yes. Al Murray, Command. Just looked quite cool, and he was wandering around. And was very nice when I chatted to him. So, yes, I got it. I have something which will be going up behind me at a certain point. I'll stick it there for the moment while I'm sorting out books. Let's see. Papers in Master HMAS Lewin, the story of the Royal Australian Navy's junior recruits. Papers in Australian Maritime Affairs on 23. Asian Energy Security. Regional cooperation in the Malacca Strait. Pretty cool. Australian Navy in Vietnam. Royal Australian Navy Operations 1965-72. Can the bookshelf handle the extra weight? Yes, it can. I have booked these bookshelves myself. There are also books which arrived while I was travelling. So, yeah, there are a lot of books which are going to be reviewed. And now, let's put it this way. This is heavy enough that even I'm going, Alex, you might have gone a bit too far on this one. I think in future, people's suggestion of posting at home might be carried out. But there again, I'd have to trust the Royal Mail. It's not the post I have the problem with in America or Australia. It's Royal Mail in the UK I have occasional issues with. Because they do have a habit of losing books. For me. Alright. Hello everyone. So, we have A Mission of Honour, the Royal Navy in the Pacific, 1769 to 1997, by John McLean. Looks pretty good. It's only $60. Carrier Attack Darwin, 1942. HMS Castlemaine. Lovely ship, lovely people looking after her. Destroyer Man, which is given to me by a lovely gentleman. Thank you. Steep Atlantic Stream, one of the ones I took with me, well worth a read. The Oxford History of World War II, again, one of the books I took with me. It was interesting. HMS Diamantina. Some Principles of Maritime Strategy, which I did take with me. Safe to Dive, Submarine Support in Sydney, 1914 to 1999. Was good. I have to admit, the book pile has now blocked out the comments section. So, yeah. Voices from Voyager. Subs Down Under. Secret Fleets. All good books so far. Wartime. Harrier. Oh, this is one I took with me. Interest of American in Sea Power, Present and Future. Rather appropriate considering yesterday's video. HMS Renown. This is her history. Or rather, the With the Renown in Australia, the magazine of HMS Renown, December 1919 to October 1920. It's a rather cool book. I'm very happy to have it. One I took with me, British Warships. Lloyd's List. That's a good one. First class, well, corvettes. I think possibly I need to move this. Let me get the rest of the books out and I will show them after I've moved the pile. Oh, Oh, good lord. Yes, it's heavy. It's worth it. It's a good book. Oh, good lord, they've ripped a hole in here. So many books, they've actually managed to pierce the lining. That takes skill or a lot of movement in flight. Okay, I may or may not be able to use that case again. I might have to do some repairs on that. Hey, so there we go. Thank God I've got concrete floors, eh? They should be able to support all this weight. Although if you still see the building start to shift, you'll know why. You'll know why. So, yeah. Rain. Turn around. This end. That end. What the? That could go in the bin. I will see you all presently. Just sorting my way through here. Hello! I see you! Still shifting book. Yada da 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 yada da da. Those people that say that I have an addiction, I couldn't imagine anything more wrong you could say. So, another book. Destroyers. Cool one. Then we have Keeping the Ships at Sea. All about ship repair at Cockatoo Island, 1857 to 1991. Cool. Then we have The Island Shipyard. Shipbuilding at Cockatoo Island, 1870 to 1987. Another cool one. From John Jeremy. ABC of Royal Australian Navy Corvettes. Looking forward to opening that. I'll probably do that tonight. And then we have from one of my new pals. Also, we have a Fly Navy. I couldn't resist. From new pals, the lovely Jerry Wesenberg and his various books about the models he has built, and really does make some fantastic models. Right, so there we go. Just to give you an idea of the book pile. That's it. Yeah. I do not. My credit card. Don't make me talk about my credit card. Okay. I have a tax bill this month, and I have a credit card account which I do not want to look at. How'd that do, Vachel? You seem very. It was a fun experience. Went from live stream to audio podcast. Ah, yes. Anyway, Doug Clarke may found one night buried in a pile of books. He'll be saying by how bottles of iron brew, propping up space rooms on the books. Potentially. The fluffy research. Hello, Michael Phillips. The fluffy research assistants aren't allowed out at the moment. The cherry tree outside me is dropping its cherries merrily, and as such, no one is getting. The doggies aren't getting out because they're trying to eat the cherries and they're bad for them. So these have also arrived for me while I've been away. And we might as well. These are the new books are going to be the books for the next few weeks. So I'm basically introducing you to possibly the next couple of months of Sunday books. That should be fun. It is very, very a big shame how hard it is. Oh, The Horizon for the Japanese Imperial Naval Air Service by Peter J. Edwards. Not sure who sent me this one. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I think that's one of my Pen and Sword review ones. It is. That's quite cool. I'll enjoy that one. Then we got... oh! HMAS Canberra. I spotted this by Catherine Sperling. Casually a circumstance. Looked an interesting read. I spotted this in a bookshop in Australia and thought, can I get that on Amazon? If I can, I don't need to take it back through UK through customs. And so I did. What else we got? Oh, what we got? Abandon and Sacrifice, the story of the Montevideo Maru. I have no idea, but I saw the other... when I typed in Catherine Sperling into Amazon, this came up as well as that one, and I thought I might as well get both. Again, I was going through a period of, oh, faggot, my credit card's going to be maxed out whatever I do. I might as well enjoy myself. So, and this is from a very nice viewer who has sent me this, and the reason I can tell it's from a very nice viewer is it's addressed to Dr. Alexander Clarke, whereas all the rest tend to address me as I'm known on my bank cards. And yes, I am Mr. Alexander Clarke on my bank cards, and there is a very good reason for this. Because as anyone who has travelled with Dr. Dan will know, and will very quickly figure out, you do not want to be known in any way, in any shape or form as Doctor when travelling. There is a very simple reason for this. And this is why I'm actually calling him Dr. Dan. Because if there is a medical emergency, they'll need to go, is there a doctor aboard? Because the airline wants to pass it off straight away they can to someone else's. It'll be someone else's responsibility. And if there is a doctor on board, then they are legally, morally bound by the Hippocratic Oath to actually be of some assistance. Unless, of course, they can claim they are completely and utterly plastered. If they can claim they're completely and utterly plastered, then they can get out of it. But that's the problem with, it's very difficult to get completely and utterly plastered to the level at which you can get out of these things. Oh. Now this is where I wish I'd bought the knife yesterday, which the very nice Will was selling. And I will call him Will, because admittedly, I have to say, I know him via Drakenfell, who I was at Chalk Valley with. And by the way, if you want some fun, you take Drac to Chalk Valley. He knows all the reenactors. And they're all going, shouldn't you be in uniform? And I swear, the man will be getting into jousting at some point. On horseback. Just as soon as he can figure out where he can keep the horse. Yeah. Da-da-da-da. Oh. You can also always tell this is not sent by a bookseller, because in the nicest way, it's wrapped up properly. Ah, yes. And I'm in. I'm in. How much plaster do you have to plaster yourself in to consider yourself plastered? A lot. Thank you, Paul. I was clarifying because I thought it was Paul. I thought it was Paul who'd sent it to me, but I was just hedging my bets because I was going dyslexia and names. You know how good you are with them. Let's see. We have Fighting Ships. It's a very cool book. Very nice book. That'll be fun. And A Line of Battle, Sailing Warships from 1650 to 1840 by Conway's History of Ships. Cool. Right. So, that is the pile of books I have to go through. Actually, hang on. We went to Chalk Valley with a history vessel. We kept seeing you through the day, but I kept being dragged by my girlfriend to look at things. You should have come and said hi. You bought a flag. You should History Vanguard. You should have come and said hi. It would have been lovely. That was a bit where you really shouldn't have come and said hi, because that was when me and Dan were running through the night school. So, here's the thing. The night school, it looked fun, and we booked tickets thinking it was going to be all ages, and it was all ages, just very few other adults were doing it. But it was fun! It was fun! Go on, Cameron. I dread to think how many books you would have got if you had been with me on the middle 3 days of my trip stops where Durham, York and Lincoln have multi-floor used bookshops. I know them all, and trust me, I visit them every year when I'm going up to Glasgow Archives. There is a reason why I always stop in the certain places on my trip up to Glasgow. I do not necessarily take the most sensible driving route. There is also a reason I have the credits I do with Booking.com and various other places to book hotels. Mainly, I have to say I do the hotel thing rather than the travel lodges. I've found that the hotel thing tends to work out cheaper because if you book them in advance, they are roughly the same price, but they include breakfast. And also, they tend to have better internet than Travelodge does. Or even the Premier Inn these days, which is quite worrying, because Premier Inn used to be quite good for reliable internet. Black Maximus, it would have been great if the UK gifted most of the battleships to the colonies museum ships. Maybe Renown to Australia, Queen Elizabeth to Canada, Valiant to New Zealand, Malaya to Malaysia, and keep one warship fight for the UK. It would have been great, but no one wanted them at the time. I have to say, though, I'm surprised. The Australians probably would have done, considering what they got stored elsewhere. Nicest way, the Australians. I love them dearly, but by God, are they the world's magpies. I mean, literally. I was wondering, and by magpies, I mean they basically go, well, no one wants that. We'll keep that. We'll keep that. You wander around, and it's one of the most... The Australian War Memorial has one of the most impressive collections of World War I artillery on the face of this planet. I think possibly they have the most impressive collection. The only reason I'm saying one of the most is there are two collections which are possibly comparable, which I haven't yet seen. And one of those includes the US Army's Museum of Artillery. And so, if I ever get to see those, then I will be able to say whether or not the Australian one is better than it. But it is certainly comparable in size and scope. I do have... The trouble is, every time I get a knife for opening stuff, it gets nicked. And I do have knives around here somewhere, my various working knives, for when I'm making stuff. But I honestly can't remember where I hid them before I went away, because I always hide my knives before I go. That might sound funny, but I don't like the idea of people being able to, come in here and find a weapon which could be used to harm anyone in the house. So the way I always hide them all before I go away. So most of my stuff is hidden up in our attic, long way away where no one's getting to, and then I have to get them down. But there is usually a working knife in here for me to find someone, but I can't remember where exactly I've hidden it. I think it's in a fake book somewhere, but goodness knows where that book is, because I have to remember which book it is. A fake. Would it be helpful if I not use something which, whilst I'm not particularly keen on the author, it's a fairly decent book, but I had multiple copies of it and not particularly keen or enamored with it, so I hollowed one out. I decided it was probably doing better service for the world. But now I can't remember, because it does have quite a cool cover. I have two of them around here somewhere, and then that'll tell me which one is. I have 2 books signed by Rick Jolly dedicated my iPhones off. Cool. Sean Quigley, glad to see you have made a homeschooling question. Since your profession is now a restaurant and YouTube content creator, does the UK government allow you a tax deduction for expenses like books you need? My accountant certainly does put books on my my cost of work and my other bills from all the stuff I do for all the computer stuff I do, and so the computers costs get put on my tax. They don't take that much of it, but they do help. It'll be easier if I join the National Union of Journalists, because then I can justify it more. So I'm probably going. Basically, me and Gareth were having the conversation, and John Bull, while we were wandering around, and that's what he suggested. So that's what I'm probably going to do. Probably at the end of this month, after I pay my tax bill. Very cool, Karma Gazberg. That's very cool. Oh, Colin Cameron. I got a copy of HMS Ajax, 1959-49 by Jess Stevens. My mum thinks she found a picture of my grandfather in it. I'm going to ask him when I see if I can get a separate copy of the photo. I'll do that. I'm sure, most authors would not be unhappy to sort that one out for you. Hello, Bob Fry. I've been to a model railway expedition. I spent too much money and I bought several 00 gauge and 09 locos, and a lot of wagons and carriages, and a lot of scenery and track and more books. Enjoy. How much plaster do you have to... A lot of plaster. Doing it plastered. Jack, right. Kershaw Cinder is a great knife. Yeah, I'll answer that one. I've sort of seen that already. It's a decent pile of books, I'd say, 2 stacks deep. So high from so, it's decent. Remember, I volunteer as mule next trip. Well, it's funny to do that. I'm actually... The reason I haven't put out the... didn't actually do the Patreon questions today was because I had some ideas, and while I was making up lunch, which was by making it up, I decided to make homemade burgers, actually sliders, 3-ounce burgers, very very nice ones. There were lamb, turkey, and beef, so it was quite a nice mixture, and well, each slider there was a lamb. Everyone had one of each of the 3 flavors. I've got a lot of beef on spare because beef mince. I bought so much of it. We'll leave that to one side. But no, while I was doing that, I was working on the trips for the upcoming trips for Shipshape and what the crew might do, and yeah. Oh, it basically goes Scandinavia next year in a sort of reverse Viking or something. I'm waiting for suggestions of the names, to Japan 2025. And anyone who's got suggested places for us to go in Japan, please note, for Scandinavia trip, which is going to be Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, please, any suggestions you think of sites you think we should go to, please send to me now. You can find my details on Discord and on various other things. And on the Shipshape website, you can find a contact email address. I think there is a contact address for me on there. For Japan, which is 2025, I'd really like them. I'd really like suggestions. The next one we're going to be doing is, and I've got to refine the islands on this, we're going to be doing what we're calling the Crusaders Mediterranean. We're going to go through the various islands of the crusading organizations in the Mediterranean and their bases. Basically, we wanted a local one, and we thought that would be quite good because those tend to have a mixture of a huge amount of crusading history, quite a lot of history from the Napoleonic Wars, and a huge amount of Second World War history. And we just thought, well, frig it, we'll do it. The one after that was, I'm still working on what the long range one after that is going to be. It could end up being Singapore, Darwin, Sydney again, because we do need to go back there quite soon, and New Zealand. The one after that will be the Iberian Peninsula. Then we've got the rest of the Baltic at some point. We've got the Pacific coast of Canada and America. We have got Indian Ocean. We have got the Mediterranean, the east, the western end. We have got another Baltic one. We have got to do Adriatic. We basically have worked it out. We think we could have 12, 15 years of these trips if people keep supporting them. And we'd be happy to do them. And the amount of naval history we can cover, and we can start hopefully sharing. But one of the things that we're going to need, especially for Scandinavia, is going to probably be local drivers to assist us. Because one of the things that especially shocked, I have to admit, not me and Gareth so much, but Dan and Drac. Me and Gareth were slightly less shocked because we know we visited Scandinavia more. We understand. We've seen it. They looked at it on the map, and on the projection, the world sort of projection was straight out. Scandinavia looks roughly the same size as the UK, so you think it's roughly the same distances, and then you find out that actually no, it's about 800 extra miles between place A and point A and point B. And no, that's not going to be an 800 miles of easy driving even in June. So yeah, it's something to look at. We're going to, so basically, my plan is to put out on Shipshape website the list of our upcoming trips for about 4 or 5 years in advance of where we're going, and have people send in suggestions and of the places which they think we should visit. So it doesn't happen what happened in Australia of us going and turning up, seeing a really cool, having a place planned which was really cool. When we're there, having the volunteers or the rest of you who turn up, who are so wonderful when you turn up. It's so nice. Someone actually, there was a real shocking moment for me, because I'm used to people turning up and seeing Drac, because he's the famous one of our group. And someone turned up to the Sydney Museum to see me. And I was sort of going, but I'm me. I'm academic. I'm the admin person. Which was really quite nice, but quite random. And a few people even came down to find me when I was in the bottom of engines of places, which was quite interesting when they found out that's where I was hiding. It's always marked as, that's where you were hiding. No, someone has to go film down in the engines. It's fun though, and I like going down the engines. I know I learn a lot going down in the engines of the ships. I really do learn a lot. But no, we've got all that coming. So basically, I'm going to put up our trips roughly where we're going on the Shipshape website for a few years in advance, and have for each page have a please, if you have suggestions of places for us to visit while we're here, comment here. You know. Or is it, I volunteer as book mule next trip. Potential. Let's run. Are you doing a Discord chat today? Not today. I will do one on Thursday, not today. Mainly because, well, as I said, I managed to give myself sunburn, so, do that, and that. Yeah, see? Sunburn. Because I put on the thing like this. Oh, no. No, I did this with my sun cream. And, no, it's this. So it's this one. Yeah. See? And you can see there's basically a mark where my hand didn't reach. Because I did this, and there was a bit of a gap in the middle. And so I got a nice sort of wiggly line of sunburn down on my neck. So no Discord this evening. The fluffy research assistants are still bouncing around me whenever. They don't like me leaving the room. About 3 nights this week, I've had different... The fluffy assistants taken in turn to come and sleep on top of me. When it was very hot in the UK, I also had a dog sleeping on top of me going, no, making sure Papa doesn't sneak out in the middle of the night. The family chef returned. Yeah, let's put it this way. I have been told I'm cooking every day this week. In fact, I've been told by Mum I'm cooking every day until her stomach feels better. Coming on, if you join the NJ, then you'll be able to get press passes at members' areas of certain vessels. I know you can definitely get them for Royal Holland Show. I know, that would be quite fun. I think, in the end, I wouldn't be surprised. I think Gareth, aka John Bull, is on a one-man crusade to get all 4 of us to sign up for NUJ membership. My coach, on my holes this month, using Hotel London's base, visiting various military sites. Depends where it is in London, but planning on visiting Chan Dockyard and any other maritime sites you recommend. Greenwich and Cutty-Sark are always good if you're near London. Portsmouth is not a long train journey from London. It really isn't. And literally the historic dockyard is right next to the train station, as is Gunwharf Quays. So if you are on the Waterloo line, Waterloo Main Line, or anywhere near that, that is a very good thing. And if you're considering getting to Chatham, you are probably on the line which goes definitely into Waterloo East. And if you're on a line which goes into Waterloo East, that is a very short walk to Waterloo. So I would say those are all good options. And also saying, don't forget the Medway Castles if you're doing Chatham. They're always good. And Belfast. Belfast. Thank you, Looker. Might be able to help on driving in Finland. Thank you. How far north are you planning to go in Scandinavia? That depends on how far north my team let me. We're definitely going to make it to Narvik. There is various debates because we've been... as you know, we go to the Future Leaders Conference every year. Defence Future Leaders Conference. And we have made friends with the senior officers we've seen almost every year from the Norwegian, the Swedish, and the Finnish navies. And we've made some quite good contacts with the Danish as well. And it's just the case. And when we did tell them that was our sort of plan. If Australia went to plan, that's where we were looking at next year. And so we got. We basically have been told to message them and tell them we're coming and that we're going to probably get some interesting... they would like to see us and chat with us and maybe host us for a talk. And again, that's the other thing that went so well. We did in Australia, we did these talks, and Brisbane was lovely. Don't get me wrong, doing a talk in Sydney was something. Okay, the Maritime Museum, doing a talk in all the facility they set up there, that was a really cool occasion. But it was something they were set up to do, and they do talks on a regular basis. So it was more a case of, yes, we're fitting into what you already do on a semi-regular basis. Brisbane, they don't normally do it. They don't normally have the facilities. They don't normally have the things set up. And so they put it all together for us, knowing we were coming. And it was wonderful. They were lovely, and it was just, yeah. It was just something so much fun to do. I think yes, we are opening up using the website to help help others fund their trips as well. Hello, Steve Clarke. Hope the car's going well. And thank you, Garius the Brit is really good he's here because he was too sick to do a live stream earlier on Twitch. So the fact that Garius the Brit is here, thank you, hope you're feeling better. And the Royal Engineers Museum is also in chat. Only a minor walking diversion on the way to the docks. It is true. I mean, a Crusader trip you can just camp out in Malta. We're going to be doing Malta. We're going to be doing Crete. Cyprus. The thing is, Darius is already. We're already getting lists of people's suggestions of where to go in the Adriatic, where to go here, where to go there. It's one of those things. We're just enjoying getting suggestions coming through and adding them into stuff. For the Arabian trip, I take you have Corona, Porto, and Lisbon lines of Torres on your list. Yes, they will be. The Iberian Peninsula trip. That's going to be a good reason to start. Oh, going around there in June. That's going to be fun. Oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be very good. Dover Castle is well worth a visit, but actually getting there from London, if you're using public transport, is interesting. We didn't manage to meet up with Jamie. Life interfered. Pisa for the Crusader 101. Yep. And nice to say, Garrus, we will do Pisa. We will do the Knights of St. Stephen are not going to get massively overlooked. Please note, we did almost leave him behind in Australia because he found a wonderful collection of books about the Knights of St. Stephen in the National Maritime Museum in Sydney. And basically, I don't think we heard anything from him for about 4 hours, other than various versions of, Eek, I found this! Oh, I found that! I'm sort of going, on the wrong end of the country if you need help. Eskimo will be part of the trip if we do the Pacific Canada. They do have a unique collection there, I do know, Gareth. I wonder if military engineers feel conflicted they both build and break things. No, they just believe they are the full circle of life. Which means they think they are something, they are... move on a couple of sections from they are the circle of life because they both see to its destruction, its creation, and the creation of new stuff, i.e. the recreation. Just go through a couple of cycles and work out what they sometimes think they are. It's fun. So, keep away from... Look, the nicest way, and I'm going to put this politely, fiberglass is not fiberglass and anything like that is not something I would consider suitable for a submersible. And as a rule, whilst I do some absolutely crazy and insane things, including crawling underneath boilers on ships, which you are not supposed to, please note you are not supposed to crawl underneath there. Those are things where I assess the risk and I know what I'm doing. And I understand it. I don't think you get any of the ship-shape crew going on anything like the submarine which sank going down to the Titanic. Mostly because none of us are quite that ghoulish, for starters, to want to visit an undersea grave in that manner. You know, we had sort of... It's going to sound strange. One of the reasons why we're interested in going to Narvik is we're hoping to take advantage of some local underwater UV technology to survey some of the wrecks in Narvik, in the fjords around there. But the first thing we very quickly decided is none of us want to dive down there, and we just want to we want to just see it, measure the technology and use it to try and get images of it so we can better understand what happened. But the idea of that's because there hasn't been as much, especially in English language, research published on those topics. And so that's what we'd like to do. There's a lot of footage available apparently, and apparently the company which does it on a regular basis to test out their UUVs. But no one's actually done it from a historical perspective. But we very carefully did have the discussion ourselves, is this something we want to be involved in? Because there are people down there who are dead. And it was a case of, well, it's basically the equivalent of having a drone flying over a dockyard. And that's our policy. You know, we fly over living people, we are going to be automatically flying over, we're not dropping down, knocking on their door, going, hello, or goggling at them. I know it's probably it's a very grey, murky area to draw a distinction, but we are drawing that distinction. Gareth, I think Drac and I both recorded, and I've uploaded might not have uploaded the videos yet of the talks at Brisbane, but yeah, they weren't set up to record them in Sydney. Hello, Andy. Yeah, you don't skip on a submarine. It's titanium or very, very specialized steel, preferably not manufactured by certain American corporations. Or it was the Xbox controller that got me. Yeah. Colin Cameron, if you're doing a trip around some of the more obscure UK Naval sites, then it might be worth looking into the shipbreaker site on the back road of Burnt Island 5. Yes. Eskimo's Bow, the one at Narvik. Blackburn Maxwell, if you ever manage to come back to Canada, stop over in Ottawa. The Aviation Museum has the only prototype of the CL-84 tilt-wing aircraft that the old V-22 did, but with less accidents than earlier. Cool. Hello, Megascrow. I would say, honestly, most computer game controllers are actually pretty darn rugged. And let's put it this way. For controlling a drone, I would certainly consider it normal. For controlling a vehicle, especially like a submarine, I would probably ask for more controls. I would have definitely not had it done by wirelessly. It would have been wired. And there would have been a backup. and a backup to the backup. Because, let's be honest, if you're remote controlling a UAV, especially a small one, and there's a problem, if it's sub 250 grams and it has to land, it lands. No harm, no foul. If you're controlling a submarine, which is, by definition, going down very, very far too deep for divers or anything like that, if there's any problems, there's no way for anyone to get out and fix them. Yep, they'll be out. They'll be up. They'll end up on the drive shortly, or at least as soon as we've got everything sorted out. So, right then, let's start off with random book from this collection, because, Garrus, I'm not sure if you've seen, these are the books I have brought back from Australia. This pile. Just the ones at the front here. All of them, by the way, you know. So, ooh. Let's start off with this one, which I haven't opened yet, even. Right. So, Royal Australian Navy Corvettes. I haven't even opened this, so this will not only be a reveal to you, it'll be a first time reading for me, but we'll see what it says. It's all good. Now, where did I get this book? That's an interesting question. I can't remember for the life of me. How many books did Drac buy? Let's put it this way. He took less clothes than me. I think he left some of those behind to bring back books. ABC of Royal Australian Navy Corvettes. Oh, this is gorgeous. Okay, so I'm gonna. It's gorgeous. It's pictures. Got table of contents there. And pretty much every single Australian Corvette has a pictures and a page in here. What they did. Even ones where they don't have many pictures of, they found some drawings of. This is gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. Oh. Ooh. Oh. So let's see. And I'm not sure if you can see, but every single page there is stenciled in basically the design and plan of the ship of the class. So they have the design and drawing of the ships. You could probably see it more on this picture. This page. You can see that is an attention to detail which I'm really impressed by. So, it's all put together by able seaman Libby Pierce. This lady. This sailor. Whilst working at the Sea Power Centre. Under the command, with forward by M.J. Noonan, who was Vice Admiral, Royal Australian Navy, and the Chief of the Navy. So, yeah, if anyone does have the contacts of able seaman Libby Pierce and can tell them, or tell her, this is a very, very cool book, and kudos. I'm not sure when she wrote this, but put this book together. I'd say 2019, so about 3 years ago. Really, really good work. They were Bathurst class, and I've done an entire presentation about why the Australians built Bathurst class rather than Flare class corvettes. I did a gate presented at Brisbane. I know that one was reported. Ooh. Ah. She went and took pictures aboard Castlemaine. Oh, that is good. Oh, those are some cool pictures. This is a very well put together piece of work. Okay, I know some historians would go, this is a picture book, da 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 da. But no, the pictures tell the story. They tell the history. Very, very nice. Huh. Reloading depth charges. It's really cool. Yeah. If you can get a copy of this, highly recommend it. Royal Australian Navy Corvettes. The rest are in a shipping container outside. Not quite. There was a possibility. Have you ever read or reviewed How Carriers Fought by Lars Calder? I think I have read it. I'm not sure if I reviewed it anywhere. If I did, it would be for Marine du Nord, because they sent me quite a few books like that. Or Northern Mariner, as it tends to be called in English. It's a Canadian journal. Very nice people. I mean, was the Bathurst class for a slightly larger Bangor class? Again, it comes from the similar world of development as the British sloop program. Danny Phillips. Renown and Pulse both get the refit and are sent to the Far East together along with Glorious's Force Z. What happens? Well, if you've got two refitted Renown and Pulse, plus you got Glorious, which by this point will definitely have a radar fitted, or probably upgraded radar fitted. So you got 3 fairly decent radars, and you're probably she's got, considering she has Furious style lifts. The lifts are going to be fairly big, so she'll have fighters aboard, possibly Hellcats, possibly Martlets at this point. So she probably possibly have Martlets or Sea Hurricanes. I would say. I'd be tempted to say it would be. Doesn't really matter which it is. She probably has fighters aboard, in which case they don't get sunk in that engagement. So the Japanese have to respond. But also you have ABDA command forms up a task force based on a carrier, two a Renown and Repulse. So with all their cruisers, etc., and destroyers gathering together under that group, that's going to be a fairly decent task force. What possibly could happen? Possibly the Americans might send one of their carriers to join in with it, in which case that becomes the Southern Battle Group, and then you've got Null and Task Force, and who knows what happens in 1941. Things get very interesting. 1942. But that would be a whole video to really answer that in depth. Will be an interesting one today. Sorry, it's going to sound strange, but I'm trying to twirl my hair out of the way because it keeps at the back. It keeps deciding to hit where the burn is. Oh. Hello, Danny. Right. Current, we should lobby the Canadians to let their ship crew have use of the Antonov 124 for the next trip, although they may try to smuggle a ship in it rather than use the space of books. I think they've returned it to the Ukrainians, and frankly they probably have more immediate need of it. My friend, Dr. Now that you are safe in UK soil, how many artifacts have gone missing and were found in the National Museum's basement? None have gone missing or found, but I have to admit, we did have some very interesting conversations with some of the museums along the lines of, you do know what that is? Because this is not the Naval Museum. Some of the other museums we went to, which had been given stuff, and it was amongst the collection of stuff which they knew about, and they weren't really sure what the other thing was. And quite a few, when we walked in, they went, "You're naval historians." Yeah. We have something we're not sure what it is. Would you mind having a look at it? Okay. Oh, frigate, where did you get that? But yeah, that is rare and that is important. Oh, cool. Going on, it's the maps that show how much of Los Angeles and San Francisco is built on reclaimed land made up of abandoned ships that always make me double take. Yeah, that is quite worrying when you realise the sheer amount of San Francisco that rests on ships. Would this have seen renowned class at the Guadalcanal? Could have done. Could have done. Could have done. Might not have actually seen Guadalcanal happen, because if you have a carrier battle group in that region, then the Japanese only option is to try and deploy a major force to try and overwhelm them and beat them. And they only need to... Let's put it this way. If you have that as your cornerstone force and they don't get sunk, and Tom Phillips there, let's put it... If then Warspite, the R's that are sent out to the Indian Ocean Force, go and join up, and Indomitable, I think it's Formidable and Lustrous, end up out there as well, you could very quickly have a force of 3 British carriers sitting there. And possibly Unicorn as well gets sent in that circumstances, because that's what she was built for, basically. You could very quickly have 3 carriers, very quickly have Warspite and possibly Prince of Wales sent out as well, well, more than likely Prince of Wales sent out as well, to back up, so you'd have 4 fast capital ships, and a whole host of other things wandering around. That becomes quite a scary force. The Japanese therefore have to deploy to fight it, and they have to fight. They have to think about how to fight it. And Phillips, for all his faults, would probably done a fairly decent job, because he would have been a fairly decent combined forces commander, and he would have had American and not just Australian, but American and American forces on his command. The interesting thing is, at a certain point, Nimitz might well prefer to use him as a force commander than some of the American officers, because he doesn't trust necessarily all the American officers who he ends up using. There's a reason he replaces some of them very quickly, because he sees them as peacetime commanders, not wartime commanders. Team Locker, how do you like the Finnish subs? They were a clever plot together. Yeah, the Finnish subs were actually pretty darn smart. Sim Richards, why didn't the RN push for Sea Hurricanes to the Spit? They did get Sea Hurricanes, but the trouble is the Hawker were no longer investing in developing the Hurricane, whereas Submarine was still working on the Spitfire, aka the Seafire. So let's put it this way: Hawker was shifting over to Typhoon and Tempest. Do you want to do nice? The British, the Royal Navy had learnt from the Fulmar. You go for an unsupported aircraft, it isn't going to evolve. It's just going to stay the same. So, do you want to repeat that mistake again with the Hurricane, or do you want to go with the Spitfire? You can go with the Spitfire. Leslie Mitchell, his idea that the third wave would not have done anything seems wrong to me. The loss of oil reserve in the dry dock would have slowed up the supply repair ships and subs. What's your view? My view is that you can theorize it's the cost versus benefit equation, right? And I think the likely cost is worth the benefit, largely because of similar ideas to you, but also because of cumulative damage on other systems. And he doesn't. So, you know, that's the good thing about being historians. There's no real right answer, as a rule. It's who can make a persuasive argument. And he's put a lot of thought into his argument. I don't agree with it, but I would say it's a well thought through argument. I just don't agree with it because I place different values on things. Going on, would a stronger 4Z7 fleet mean that MacArthur might have been dumped when he was evacuated rather than have him interfere with any part of the US Pacific Command? It might have been found that it was necessary to have a different commander, Southeast Theatre. If you have, in effect, the British Indian Ocean Fleet, a British Eastern Fleet, operating in the Southeast Asia area because of this, and let's be honest, one of the things that you have to remember again with the fall of Singapore, if the 4C hadn't been lost, if there's a carrier battle group operating, then they could have caused all sorts of trouble for the Japanese landings. They could have harassed Japanese forces as they tried to move up the coast and supply lines, and Singapore might not have fallen because there are other things which could have been done with a larger naval force present. And if the Japanese army runs out of supplies, then they have to withdraw at some point. Yes, I know they'll push it on to ad absurdum, but they can't go on ad infinitum with no resupply. And so if Singapore doesn't fall, then you and the Philippines might still fall, probably still fall. Let's be honest, MacArthur's still in charge. But you might well not have the fight getting into Indonesia. You might not have the Dutch East Indies fall. And if you don't have the Dutch East Indies fall, then you have a very different area of command. And, well, it could be that they go, well, the South China Sea area, that's going to be the British-led theatre. And this area is, the Central Pacific is going to be the American-led theatre. In which case, you probably get a British 5-star deployed to be in charge. The question is, would it be a 5-star general or a 5-star admiral? Probably knowing the British would be a 5-star admiral. There aren't very many admirals of the fleet going around at this point. There are a few. He's injured. The other's Lord Corconori. You probably have a choice of Cunningham or Somerville. It might well be Cunningham is sent to take command of it, in which case Somerville could be brought back to run the torch, etc., which he'd be perfectly fine for doing. And actually that would be probably better for his health than the Indian Ocean Command. Hello, the Brook. But also, Spitfire had a better performance than a Hurricane. Broadly speaking, especially in the important thing, which is climb rate. What do you think about the Canadian Joint Fist being replaced by the Joint Project French for 16-inch Rickley battleships? That would never happen. Under any circumstances. Just wouldn't. And in nicest way, the King George V, you have to consider the British openly admit, there are lots of admirals who openly admit the King George V's are not the best ships they could build. They are the practical ships they can build because the politicians want 14-inch guns and because the Chatfield wants 14-inch guns. So they're putting 14-inch guns in them. But you could honestly take a King George V design, and I've done that in goodness knows how many episodes of UAD, taken the King George V, otherwise the King George V design, stuck 16-inch guns in it or 15-inch guns in it, and it's been perfectly fine. I think today's Twitch screen was 15-inch 45s, and I was dealing with 8 twins on a rebuilt Queen Elizabeth class vessel, basically. And it massacred a Super Scharnhorst, a Super Gneisenau Scharnhorst type. And that's the thing, 15-inch 45s would have been perfectly fine. And 9 of those in 3 triple turrets. And considering the 16-inch turrets you've got, it's one of the other interesting things. There was an interesting commentary about, what would the triple turret design have been like for the British? Well, the question is to look at Nelson and Rodney, because those are the triple turret designs which the British are basing theirs on, and what they've been looking at for the G3s and various other options. And they're quite spacious, decent-sized turrets. Well, considering they've basically used the same shape and ring for those they use for their triple 15s, every option, it's a viable thing. I would say that ring is still sufficiently big enough that I don't think you would get a modified Queen Elizabeth class. However, as a straight thing, you might have a Queen Elizabeth class be changed to a 9 15-inch gun overall design with 3 triple turrets, and lose one of their turrets in exchange for the weight saving, so that weight can be put into, and especially with the boilers, so they can be made up to 28-knot ships with 9 15-inch guns and still have all the armor improvements, because you can do that with a Queen Elizabeth design. I don't think my phone keeps going off in here. I don't think I've heard my phone the entire time. No Japan Dutchies Hindus promoted a lot less oil for Japanese operations, so lots of butterfly effects. Yep. Andy PWR, Force Z, I've wargamed it out many times and results were really surprising as the Force Z survives Force Z survives 10 times. Yep, it wasn't naturally a natural loss, and you add in a carrier and basically there is very little circumstance where they even lose one of them. Mountbatten would shoot in MacArthur even if just by accident. I'm so amazed when I lived at Petaluma, just how incredibly lackadaisical San Francisco residents, especially those on Millionaires Row near Badabeva, no idea of liquefaction. Fun times. Dr. Clarke, how user-friendly would you consider the Australian UK archives when doing online research? They're getting there. They have moments of being quite helpful. They have also moments of being computer said no, and then when you talk to a person they go, I have no idea why the computer said no. Wait a minute, did HMS Diamantina have a hedgehog when commissioned? I don't think so when commissioned. You've heard my phone several times. That's weird, because my phone is on silent. There you go, on silent. So, what else is beeping in here, one wonders? What else is beeping? And I'm not hearing it. Don't think my watch is. I think the British built the Russian World War One triple turrets. Yes, the Ganget design, the triple turrets are designed by Britain, are designed in British yards. So, this thing, the British were perfectly capable of building, as I've shown pictures of before, and I'm doing more research into. The British have triple turrets, and they're going around. They're designing them. They have them as a viable thing. They just don't implement them. It's one of those things. It's one of those things I remember when I was doing the Ultimate Queen Elizabeth class. You know, triple 16.5-inch guns are perfectly viable. On the same level as the 15-inch guns which are selected. The thing is, the British don't because of a calculation of what will happen. Because if they make a 12 16.5-inch gun ship or a 15 16.5-inch gun ship with 28 knots guaranteed speed, because they go small tube boilers, if they do all that, they know they're going to make a ship which is going to cause a lot of problems in the tech race. So the British are pulling punches even in the Dreadnought race. They're pulling punches because, let's put it this way, when you are, their view is that the Americans feel security, but Americans build their ships slower, but with more guns. So for the British, they're basically going, well, we can afford to have less guns as long as we have a speed advantage over the American fleet, because our admirals, we will trust that they will be more experienced, more practiced, and get their shots on more quickly. It was a doorbell. Ooh. Wonder if it's picking up the Ring doorbell somehow. It's the King Rose did the job, that's it. That's pretty much all they're required to in the end. And if Repulse was a boss. Yes. Repulse, as I've said before many times, it's frigging bad luck that she actually gets hit. She's done such a good job avoiding being hit, and such good work that frankly she very nearly survives with it completely intact. Wasn't a Hedgehog standard equipment? You asked me when she was commissioned if she had the Hedgehog fitted. It was supposed to be standard equipment for the River class frigates, but I think for Time and Tina, I don't think they had, for the first few ones, they had enough for them. So some of them get them retrofitted after they've been commissioned. They're supposed to have them. But I seem to remember reading something about Diamond Team when I was aboard her that she didn't get it when she was first commissioned. Because of a shortage. But I'm not 100% sure. This is from memory. Dee-dee-dee-doo-da. That's definitely not my phone. What is making that noise? Because I hear nothing. And my hearing, I had a hearing test this week and I was perfect, so. Yeah. John McKay, Dr. Clarke, you mentioned in your Nelson class video the RN was looking into 50 cal 15-inch guns for the F3s. Why did the RN look into 15-inch 45s in 1930s instead of 50s? Well, that's an interesting question, because as I was talking about today, there is a possibility of them ending on 15-inch 45s. There really is. That is theoretically what they were looking into. But there is also quite a strong possibility that you end up with something a lot more greater. Because the 14-inch guns, if you consider them, the 14-inch guns were 45s, and so 45 is sort of a standard thing the British were looking at, but there is quite a strong possibility that you could end up with a 48, or even something slightly bigger. I occasionally have this conversation with people where I go, what happens if the Royal Navy ends up with the 15-inch 52? Which was a gun which was theorized at one point in the late 1920s, 15-inch 52. I remember reading a journal article about it. Not a journal article, article in one of the Naval Institute Press, Naval Brain. Sorry, this is why I'm doing books and doing it slow and doing mostly chat. Brain still hasn't recovered from. Well, instead of me getting some time off this week, I had to do emergency cover at work. So my brain is now. I flew back. I landed in the UK. Then I did emergency work. Then I went to Chalk Valley. Now I've had day off when I've been cooking, and brain is now going. Hello, we're allowed to reset now. Yes. But it's they'd have been useful. Let's put it this way. So I think the 15-inch, 15-inch, yeah, there is a possibility they end up as a 52. 15-inch 52s would be interesting. The next time you do UAD, could you? Yeah, I'll put it on the list. York class cruiser with triple 8-inch guns. True Competition, Repulse should have been a class of 5. Renowned class should have been a class of 5. Yes, that would have been useful. T-Mobile used to default to whatever that notification sound was. I've never had T-Mobile. I have Ye. With the removal of a turret, but the expansion of the remaining turret ring, the SCO triples, would square foot of deck armor go up or down? Probably up, but not by that much, really. Anyway, only PWR. North Carolina's were going to be 40-inch. Here's Morrison. If the British try to modify the Queen Elizabeth, do they have time to complete the refits in time? Yes. Again, you have to understand just how much the British were pulling their punches when it came to their maritime industry at the beginning of World War II, in the run up to World War II. I mean, literally, we are talking about a same government which was simultaneously building up for World War II and paying yards to close. You've never had a more stupid piece of work going on in the world than what you have the Treasury going around trying to pay yards to close, and the Admiralty going around trying to pay yards to upgrade and build and modernise ships. And sometimes they are having meetings with them almost the very next week. The week before, the Admiralty's going in making their pitch, and then the week after that, the Treasury's turning up to go, how much money will you take to close? Then right, I think everything I've read about Renown Repulse mentions how bad the triple 4-inch mount was. So why weren't they replaced or just remove the Cinder gun? They were twin 4 and 4.7. Because, as a rule, the people writing about them are writing about and saying how terrible they are in retrospect of World War II. In terms of World War One, they weren't that bad, but they were difficult to load because the 4-inch guns were close together. And honestly, let's put it this way. As annoying as the issues were, they weren't so great that they were going to justify doing the work in peacetime, and until they decided to have their major refit. To approach 15-inch 50 is roughly 17.5 meters in barrel length. Similar to 15-inch 45s would have a weight less than the quad 14s. Yes. Because 15-inch L45 was supposed to be lighter than the L42 to be L42 to begin. Yes, it was. I think that's where some of the stuff came in, because it was found that you could build a barrel which I think was 48, and that would weigh as much as the 42. No, hang on. The L45, 15-inch L45 was going to be lighter than the L42 in terms of barrel weight. And I think for them to get up to equal weight, it has to get to L52. So it's basically got to be another 150... brain work it out. Yeah, 150 inches longer for it to weigh the same weight. Andy, I would rather have 5 rounds than one hood. Maybe the suggestion next time should be what would Dr. Clarke do if he had to control the Royal Navy budget from 1930 to 39? Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. It would be the 15-inch gun. It would be the 15-inch gun, and I've pushed into it and probably tried to push for at least the 15-inch 48. I would have tried to push for something greater than 45. So I'd have probably gone because I wouldn't consider that enough of a jump over the 15-inch 42 in capabilities. I would have probably pushed for the 15-inch at least 48, maybe more. 48 would certainly be enough to cause a lot of fun. Because let's be honest, 16-inch 50 versus the 15-inch 48, you've probably got 2 fairly decent guns going on in your hands. The York class were close enough to the 10,000 tons as it was. Oh yeah, that's easy enough. That will go in the freezer in a bit. I'm sure you're all quite surprised to have heard that when I looked at it. Andy reminded, I just noticed on Andy's letter reminded that there's some mould on here. If you're going to kill mould on a book, you stick it in a freezer. Make sure it's not a wet freezer. Make sure it's very, very cold, but stick it in the freezer. It will kill the mould. Always remember to place it in preferably a zip top plastic bag, and then pop it in the freezer. And again, from experience, longer, not just overnight. Leave it in for about 2 days. I should probably get a dehumidifier, but there again, I find that in fact the office in the garden acts as a fairly decent dehumidifier for me in the UK weather. I just have to keep the window open for a fair bit. Lions, why was the government paying for yards to close? Because the government was being stupid. On a more serious note, because the government was being stupid. No, seriously. The government was paying for yards to close because they thought if they closed down some yards, that would, how do I put this? Reduce the national dependency upon shipbuilding for employment, and therefore allow for a growth of other industries. Again, they're being stupid. You know, if the time-travelling Alex had that level of access, then we would have seen a very different Battle of the Atlantic. And there would have been a dozen sloops at least launched every single year from about 1930 onwards. Probably 16. Probably 2 flotillas of sloops launched every single year from 1930 onwards. All with 4.5-inch guns. Or 4.7-inch guns in dual-purpose mounts. Twin turbine powered, 2 turbines, standard boilers, no ability to fit torpedoes, but governors limiting their speed until I needed their speed to go up. No, the normal stuff. Probably I'd make them, actually, I'd probably make them, knowing me, oh, that would be clever. I could make them electric. And I could have the turbine as the power to boost it. So diesel to give it long range travel, and then I could have a turbine to kick in to give it even more power, so give it high speed ability. That's an option. Guys, Ziploc salt or rice? No, don't use salt. Do not use salt. Rice, I mean, it's still iffy about. It's better not to put anything in there. Salt can cause the pages to dry out too quickly. Rice adds in some biological contaminants into it. And the whole thing is you want to kill off the biologicals. So whilst I do know you read some people do advise that, I never do. I prefer to leave it in the bag in the freezer for a bit longer. Other industries such as, well, they weren't onto that one. You know, now you're asking them to think too much. Dad Freeman. Interesting. Wouldn't that just make a lot of people unemployed? The idea was to release the people's natural ingenuity away from the shipyards. Hi, Vernon. 2 minutes. So, sort of code log style population, possibly. Silica gel. Saying that. There we go. Did it cost a lot extra? Let's put it this way. Someone was very nice and very generous about assisting me with the cost of getting the baggage home, and they very helpful in getting in, let's put it this way, in paying for getting the books around, and gave an amount which I thought would be more than enough, but no, airlines managed to prove me wrong, and that amount which was given, which was quite hefty, turned out to be half of what was required, thanks mostly to more to Qantas. Singapore Airlines alone, the upgrade with luggage expenses and etc. was roughly 450 quid. But Qantas cumulatively managed to charge me for moving the luggage around and the necessary upgrade to get the luggage aboard for the Perth flight, etc. I think that total cost me moving the books, etc., everything around cost me about £1,200, and someone who very kindly did actually donate quite a large sum towards that. So I can't really, I'm not going to complain, but yeah, books do come with a cost of movement. I don't know, it was worth it. They're already finding every new piece. Yeah, it's useful when it comes in, but it's useful remembering it. Usually mine gets nicked for other things. I have a habit of putting it in boxes where I store my model railway engines. And that's a long. Let's put it this way: for me to get the luggage from Canberra to Perth, it was cheaper to pay for the upgrade, paid for the upgrade to business class than it was to pay for the extra luggage. That is when you know there is something silly going on. I'm not sure if that's always the way, but it worked out with the amount of the luggage and weight I was carrying and the surcharges they were prepared to charge. It was cheaper for me to bid and get upgraded to business class. We could have nearly bought another store in their luggage allowance for that much. Honestly, yeah. It's something we have to. It is something we have to think about in future. One of the things also I've noticed is that my economy premium tickets for Singapore Airlines, the budget, the luggage allowance was far more generous than for the economy. In practice, once you worked it out, and business class again up, and there is, or you have to almost work out how much is it going to cost me to get this stuff back. Is it worthwhile me booking the better ticket seat on the way there and back to have the luggage allowance for the return journey? I am an OO gauge and an N gauge guy, and I hope to someday have an O gauge line running around a garden. Think well, Danny, right? How much would it have been if you posted them back? I did go and have a look in the shops, and There were various criteria for the posting, but the main thing that worried me was the issues in terms of timelines that came with the postal, and it seemed to be different in Canberra than in Perth than in Sydney. And I went and looked at all three as options. In the end, I decided it was safer to bring them back with me. Everyone, it's good to be back. I've realised that I see many in the chat as friends, despite not having met them and not being close to 2 months of being weird. This is why I have the premiere. I set certain things up as premieres, because I do know quite a lot of you, and I chat to each other and enjoy the chat, the social side of the lives, and so I set them as premieres so you still have the chat, even if I couldn't log in or was asleep when they were live. I think a fair number of them went live at 4 a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. Let's see. I was 9 hours, either 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning for me. Between 7 and 9 hours, I was 7 to 9 hours ahead. And basically, 2 a.m., I might have been happy to respond at 2 a.m., but at 4 a.m., it's well into what I consider my time of the night, where I might be awake, but I'm going to be doing something else, non-work related. I'm going to be reading a fiction book. I'm going to be doing various things which I do at night at that time. It looks like posting books. Posting the books home might have been cheaper. However, some of them are incredibly rare books, so I was going to be bringing them home. I was going to be bringing them home anyway, and then it was a case of hang on, which books am I prepared to send out of my site? Because the rule is with all the books was that these had to be books which I couldn't really get in the UK for me to be worthwhile, and for them to be worthwhile me buying while in Australia or getting while in Australia to come home. Some of them are gifts, of course, which means again they are very valuable in terms of they are someone's gift to me. They have personal value in and above their financial value or their value as research units. And at a certain point, how much do you trust the postal service for it? Far too kind, Jack. Max Rowe, been thinking of requiring my Legos to set up a Lego Railway Station town. That is cool. There is an entire YouTube channel which is dedicated to that, and some of the Lego engines are frankly fantastic. One of my little cousins has recently somehow got into this. I'm not sure how. Their parents don't really know where it's come from, and they're now getting into it. And I have to say, as the uncle who is brought in because he is the train person to help them with their construction and setting it up, it's a lot of fun. It's a very good railway. I think the next bilge pumps will be focused on the UK, on several papers which will come out very soon. There's about 3 papers we're going to be reading through. I think possibly one of those might be the RAF decision, the RAF inquiry that recently came out. Might be. We might not do that. I'm presuming there's Formula Racing on as Knight 6831 isn't here. What's your opinion on Royal Navy small arms? They're fair. Let's put it this way. The weapons officially are fairly. The official weapons are fairly decent. The weapons which are unofficial are multivariate and interesting. And again, just remember, if you are an ally and it's not tied down and you haven't got your hand on it, telling people who owns it, it's fair use. If you ain't using it and we have a need, we will use it. Has always been the British way. Even if you're our opponent, If you no longer have need of your equipment, we will make use of it. Even if the reason you no longer have need of the equipment is because we've taken it off you, we will make use of it. I asked little Miss Raisback if I could borrow headphones, and Miss Raisback immediately said, "I guess Dr. Clarke is back from Australia." Hello, Mrs. Razorback. Andy, are you going to do Discord Champions chat? No, I'll do it Thursday. I'll do one Thursday. Not tonight. Tonight I am. Tonight? Well, tonight I have to admit my plan after the live is to go and play some more the Fluffs, because they missed me a lot while I was away. They really did. You have to remember, COVID happened, and whilst the longest I've been away since COVID was Canada, in a continuous trip away. And then Australia was over a full month away. And when I was away in Canada, a friend of mine called Nick, I've known him for many, many years, very kindly assisted in making sure they got walks every day. He didn't do all of them, but did quite a few of them, so that it was shared with my sister. Because I don't normally do all the walking. And my uncle did some of the walking as well while I was in Canada. However, this year, my uncle, my great aunt, my uncle's mum, died just before I went away, so he was doing all that for the month I was away. Nick is otherwise dealing with his own growing family, and so it was all left to my poor sister. And unfortunately, she managed to, let's put it this way, make herself unwell as well. I'm not going to say how she made herself very unwell for most of the time I was out in Australia, but she was very, very unwell, and so was unable to walk them. So basically, they had a month where they could run around in the garden, which is quite a big garden. I almost call it big garden because we have another small part called the little garden. No reference at all for the rest of you to understand, but that's what we call it. But they didn't actually have walks. They only had about one walk while I was away, because she managed to make herself ill. So yeah, they're very, very happy I'm returned, and I've been basically doing 2 walks a day since I've been back. Hello, Renona. That's the main problem with posting is custom charges. Mm-hmm. But was it Defence Combat was supposedly before parliamentary recess? I will look forward to when it's out. At the moment, I am trying to deal with people who keep trying to turn the current defence debate in the UK into an army versus navy defence debate, and the trouble is you need both. Hello, Morgan. Hello. Oh, I was asking. Lego is great, but frigging expensive. If I was to build Lego Trains Edition to Star Wars Lego stuff, I have a trick for that. And one of the things I noted very quickly was in Australia, Lego is a lot cheaper. In fact, me and Gareth might have, John Bull, aka Garius, the Brit, might have spent quite a large amount of time in a Lego store in Canberra, going, we're supposed to be looking at history, yeah, but are you doing the price turn? Are you doing the working out of the costs in pounds in here? Yeah. Think of the actual word it means. While you're thinking that, I'm gonna. That's only That's $20. Yeah, that's like £12. That costs like £30 in the UK. It does. I didn't bring any Lego back because I didn't have space in my bags because of books. But trust me, it was tempting. Australia. Go there. Collect your Lego. Yeah, it was worth it. Unfortunately, whilst I don't drink because of personal abstention rules, my sister doesn't drink alcohol because she's actually allergic to alcohol. So sadly, it wasn't that. But there is also a reason that I am doing all the cooking now that I am home. uh, I heard some UK subjects rubber through the years discard junk piles of perfectly useful items after little repairs in the last Iraq War. Oh yes, there's all sorts of stuff which could be very useful. Hello, Frank Barmel. Go University of Arkansas. Guy Cameron. Always was surprised that some RN crew did not manage to steal at least one phalanx off a US ship in the North Atlantic, or made to take down to the Falklands. Officially no. The Dutch might have. You're just thinking of phalanx. The Dutch might have complained about some of their systems disappearing. Goalkeepers, remember, are quicker and easier to mate to British systems than phalanx was at the time. I don't think anyone was actually nicked. I think it's just a urban myth, but you know, I'm not quite sure. Right, Dominion has lots of HMS Sydney, currently viewed in Australia, with a lot of pain. I heard about it, but also a lot of cynicism about the account that's provided. Was it worth sacrificing the Hiryu by the Japanese to get the Yorktown and Midway? Probably. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Freezer for books, because if you have a de-icing freezer, it will pull moisture from log killing, no silica, rice, or baking soda. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, Darius. I've just realised you're Fluffy research assistant has died. I'm sorry to hear that. 3 months before his 11th birthday. Oh, that's sad. I'm sad. Bernese shepherd dog in a long time. Yeah. But to me, a dog's life, especially the longer it is, shows how much it's loved. Because usually, the length of time they live, I think, the more love they have. But there again, if they go early, that's usually because, unfortunately, God just needs extra angels. That usually happens when there's a shortage of angels. That's when when dogs go early. So I've been to a 6mm specialist wargame show today. Apparently for the Games Workshop fans, Epic is returning the Frith range in 8mm scale. Cool. Just wrong. Borrowed without consent or intent to return. But we return it once we've used it. Yes, I think in 1918 was convinced England was looking at 18-inch 20-inch because of an MP talking about them. Looks like they were looking at 18-inch, too heavy, with large charges and a longer barrel. Yes, version of existing guns. Yeah? That's what was going to be fitted onto the N3s. And the British had already produced an 18-inch gun, so the Americans knew we were perfectly capable of doing it. And had shell designs already in place, and had all that experience from operating those 18-inch guns to put into our knowledge of developing 18-inch guns. Or is it? Dr. Clarke, would the RN consider producing Escort vessels today and back to the fore and going for incremental improvements a la Japan? If the government were prepared to fund it, that's what they'd be happy to do. That's supposed to be what the Type 31 design, class is, the 31s and the 30s are supposed to be for, basically. You just keep ordering batches and batches, and eventually you sell off the old ones once you have enough in service, and then you just keep them rolling as a constant frigate factory. But it's going to depend if the government are actually prepared to do it. Right, so the 24-pack of Iron Brew survived my trip, but it acclimated me to a higher than normal intake of non-water beverages as soon as the Virginia summer started to bite, and now I need to cut back. You can try, but you won't. No one ever does. They might achieve it for a while, but they never do forever. Don't worry. The brew will see you through. I was like, didn't that dependence on trade merchant shipping? Why didn't they put more into merchant ships and escorts? Because the Japanese weren't building for a long war. And remember what our recent war experience was? They'd assisted the British in the Mediterranean, and they'd defeated the Germans at Tsingtao and that, but they hadn't had much of a war fight at World War One in the Far East, hadn't been really that massive. And then the Russo-Japanese War. So that's what they're basing, that's their war experience they're planning from. We are planning to refight Trafalgar for this year, but each year there'll be another one to do. There are various ideas for how to do them. Jutland is being looked at one point for potentially for one. We're working out what the plan is going to be for Scandinavia. I have suggested Copenhagen, refighting the Battle of Copenhagen, because that could be quite cool. But it's making sure we have the materials necessary to do so. I remember some guy actually made an airsoft phalanx explosive weapon system. Yep, there always at least one guy who does that. Demon Locker, ultimate history thing. How RSC would have fared if Halsey would have let him face the Japanese fleet in the Battle of Samar? Probably would have won, but I don't think it would necessarily have been as easy as some of the US Navy fanboys believe it, but I think it would have been as victorious as the US Navy tends to think it would have been, but it would have been, there would have been losses, because the Japanese aren't going to go down easy. No, sorry, 2 old months ago, a therapy dog that was a clinic something past. Some other dogs have been in a subtle sense. They will be. Honestly, one of the things I did with our dogs was I kept talking to them through the cameras, the ring cameras, whenever I was awake and they were wandering around, so that they didn't think I'd actually gone, they didn't think I was dead or anything like that. They just didn't see me. Nicole Ross. Okay, inquiry minds want to know how much of a budget has retained. Let's put it this way. Okay. There was my budget for spending on books and other things. And there was the amount I spent on books and other things. Those two things were not in any way related. The main other things I spent on were things like, well, I don't think my aunt, the one who set me, who's now setting the limit as 15,000 subscribers for the Christmas bet, watches my Sunday videos. So this is her present, which we're picking up next week when apparently I'm doing a barbecue for everyone. So yes, that's one of the reasons why I did the free burgers types today, to practice for next week's barbecue. Don't worry, the normal YouTube video will be fine, but I have a feeling the Sunday morning Twitch stream won't happen, as I will be setting up a barbecue, and no, you won't be on it. I'm getting it going so I can feed about a dozen people. Yeah, it'll be a dozen. A dozen, yes, about 12. No, you won't have to eat. You won't have to play with all of them. Yeah, it happens. Budget as a percentage. Oh, okay. So total cost for moving the books around Australia, especially after sort of once aggregate and getting them home, was roughly £1,200. That's not including the suitcase, which made it up to about £1,500, I think. Yeah, about £1,500. And total amount spent on... You see, the trouble, it's not just books out there I was buying, it was research and archive materials, which mostly have come back in digital format. And some archives I went to visit, etc. Some of the ones in Perth, some of the ones I managed to go visit in Brisbane, etc. Some were very nice to me. They opened up at really weird hours for me because of when I was there. So I would do a full day at the museum. I would go back, have some food. Usually have a bit of rest, have a bit of food with the crew. And then I would maybe pottle down to an archive or something in the evening if they would let me in. And some were very kind and did let me in the evening. And I probably spent about the same amount again in archives and books. So yeah, that probably was... And the original budget was about 500 for one, and about 200 reckoned on transporting books around. So yeah, the original budget was 700 and actual expenses were roughly $3,000. Which is why I'm not looking at my credit card right now. I'm just not looking at it. It's all on the credit. It all went on the credit card. I'll sort it out. I'll pay it off. I've got some TV work coming up. I've got some work for Justin Craig coming up. It'll be paid off. It'll be sorted out. That is future Alex's problems after I've dealt with the tax bill in July, which will be done. Garrison, I want to do Battle of the Land. That would be cool. That'd be cool. We're going to have to work through these things. Very cool, Frank Bell. Later on, how do you handicap the RN enough on Jutland that it's actually close? You delete 5th Battle Squadron and you delete the battle cruiser force entirely. You delete all the battle cruisers, you delete 5th Battle Squadron, then it becomes more of an issue. But you'd have to delete a whole lot of British cruisers, and you'd have to delete a whole lot of British destroyers as well. That could be fun, Sean. So you've got, had an interesting chat on another history channel today. 1798, Napoleon goes west to the US to recover lost French territory from the 30 Years' War. Nelson hunts the fleet down and sinks it off New Orleans. Discuss. Ouch, and could work. Because it's basically Nelson sinking the French fleet, and that's potentially that would make him be quite successful. The fact that Napoleon has decided to go to the US rather than to Egypt, lucky America, basically. I think it might have caused a very interesting scenario where the British and the Americans allied at that point against the French. If it makes a feeling better, I have to limit myself to 3 books per gift shop on vacation. I didn't limit myself. He's talking to... No, I'm talking to a quokka. This is a quokka. It's a quokka. Yeah, it's a realistic shake. Which they did occasionally. But normally they were sort of going along like this. Food. And also, as Dan will know, if I stick a quokka up on screen, it is almost immediate that Drakenafel will be watching going, "Come to me, come to me." It's a quokka. I'm Darius Ratsky. I am barbecuing next Sunday because this is my brother's wife has her birthday. Cool. Don't you imagine how small can range-finding radar be made in the early 1950s? Do you mean the dish or the whole unit? Because the dish and the whole unit will probably be about the size of my fridge here, but the dish will probably be about the size of my screen, if that makes sense. So basically, think of a single height fridge unit, and that's about the size of the unit that sort of goes behind it. And the dish will be about the size of a large computer screen. That's right. She was the oldest guest dog at the clinic, the youngest of the original pack. The other 2 German Shepherd dogs were old even back then. One of them was retired as her behaviour became settled. The other was door guard. Huh. Cool, Stephen. My wife would unlive me if I dropped the match on books. This is possibly why I do not have a female. I do not have a significant other. Hello, Instagram. World 1 from Australia is now done. Red Bull 1 again, and I will be in Bruships next week as Formula 1 from Silverstone, and it's live coverage. But I hope the doc can handle 60 questions. I'll look forward to it. I'm sure there are some loony patrons listening. I hope so. Hello, Malay64. I have videos of our intrepid Drac versus Quokkas. We have many videos of Drac versus Quokkas. The Garrison Brits, random rice dolls for exploding orange ships. Oh. Let's hear. If IJ Shiranu had known that IJ and Kenyan and Iranian survivors had been rescued, Fujinami had gone down with all hands, and how should Ragana? Can she rescue Hayamoshi's crew and be gone before Intrepid and Rise of Bombers turn up? In theory, yes, but in practice, no, because people getting out of the water rarely act as in theory. In my experience, any evacuation of personnel rarely goes at a timetable set. So you either have to abandon people, or you have to, or you're going to get attacked. Miguel Ross, hey, our 6 frigates would have been different versus Napoleon. I don't think UA had all the 6 frigates available in 1798. I don't think so. I don't think all of them were available. And whilst I'm sure they would have been useful, I'm fairly certain that Nelson would have sort of gone, cute. You don't use the same signal books as me, so I can't use you as repeaters. And you don't do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, you'll be used as a screening force. Renan, how much of the War of 1812 was the French egging the US on, and how much was it just my fellow Americans being Americans? About 50-50. No, Rapper is right. Drac is the one of the 3 of us who were there, and of the 4. Let's put it this way. Okay, so this is the example I would give. Okay, we were at Chalk Valley. It was me, it was Drac, and it was Dan at wandering around Chalk Valley yesterday. And we're looking around going, where's Drac gone? He was in the Great Buzzard. The Great Buzzard tent, talking to the people who wanted to save or bring back the Great Buzzard. Really nice people and really good cause. But yes, Drac is by far and away the biggest animal lover of all of us. Cool, that's you, Mitchell. So, congratulations. Okay, so your stuffed pet looks like a go from the Caddy Shack. I would agree it does. Richard, this conference you are doing, can you give me 6 months head up so I can research a book a hotel? You will get 6 months heads up, and you will get also on the subject of the hotel. Look, I will say that our first choice of place is Greenwich, for it, and we are hoping we can arrange it so that we get to use university accommodation, and basically sell people that you can come here. You can come here and stay basically in the old Naval College, because that's where it'll all be hosted and it'll be run. That's our dream. That's our first choice. Garius is Garius the Brit, as he's called on here, is the person who's leading that. How much did I spend on books? I admitted that once. I've said it once. If I say it multiple times, then multiple cousins might start repeating this to parents, and that will get repeated around, and I will have to make it explain again that I am able to do so, because I pay all my bills and pay all my contributions, and what I spend on the credit card fees is up to me. My point about Bonaparte was that he won't be in France in 1882 to become l'Empereur because he's stuck in Louisiana territory that he's not yet sold to the US. True. But there again, he wasn't technically in. He was technically in Egypt for quite a while, and that didn't really bother the British. They got the ones who actually floated him back. It was Sir Sidney Smith who got him back from Egypt to France because it would cause more trouble for the French. That's right. Did the RN have plans to flog off its 13.5-inch armed battleships, battlecruisers, Dominions? Not really, but they probably would have started doing that if they'd in 1920s, if they'd thought it viable. But it's which of the 13.5-inch ships would go. Lyman Maximus, when did dipping sonar come around? The first dipping sonar, as in the helicopter-based dipping sonar, comes about in the 1960s-ish. Is when it's first being tested. But dipping sonar, as in forms of dipping sonar that have been hoisted off on cranes and dropped into the water to try and get through usually the layers, the thermal layer, etc., have actually were experimented with in World War II. Can I apologise for Discord ping on Friday? I realised I probably arrived at 12 at night, but I wanted to provide proof Drac was alive and not ambushed by ninjas, jet lag, lack of sleep. Thank you for that. It was actually quite good. Buzzard. No, it's Bussard. The Great Bussard. It's not a buzzard. Bussard. It's another aircraft, another player, another bird. Yeah. Spelt busted, but pronounced Bussard. And yeah. It was. I will put a link to them in the chat. Huh? Nice one. DM me a hashtag. Okay. Representative Dr. Clarke, in your opinion, would Japan have done better if they didn't rely so much on diversion a la Midway? I think, honestly, Japan should have operated on the policy of it either requires everything or it requires nothing. I think that might have given them a lot bit more capabilities. Because the Americans are always going to divide themselves because the Americans want it all. Whereas the Japanese could afford to be strong when the Americans weren't, or rather stronger when the Americans weren't. And it could have been very good for their scenarios. Nice one. How do the treaty powers modify the treaty? Empire says no to 10-year building holiday. Grounds are quite understandably and not build battleships as ours, and wanting not to have something that would be detrimental to the economy industry and cause the historic famine feast cycle of the late 1930s. Well, you have to remember the British do get to build Nelson and Rodney. That is basically because the British go, well, we are going to build some battleships, so you have to let us build something. The question is, I think the Americans and Japanese, I think the Americans would have been forced to factor in. You could have factored in some sort of viable building program. For the British, if they'd been able to churn out a couple of basically 2 battleships every 2 years, as long as they didn't go over a cumulative tonnage for their, for it didn't go over a certain unit tonnage or cumulative tonnage, I think it would have been fine, because that would have been enough low rate production to keep everything going. So I think it would have been worked out for the British, the Americans, and the Japanese. But I think at that point you've also required to have slightly larger allowances. So again, it might have been a case of 20 and 20 battleships for the 20 capital ships for the British, 20 capital ships for the Americans, and 14 for the Japanese. In which case, it would be a scenario of, right, every 20 years you will have replaced your ships. So you think about that. If you're building if you're allowed to build pair every 2 years, then by 19, well, if you start in 1920, by 1940 you'd have 18 ships which have been built prior to post World War One in Royal Navy service, and 2 more under construction, sort of thing. That would have been a sensible scenario. That's happened. The ramifications they are in having full squadron renowned class battlecruisers to draw upon during World War II. If they've all been fully upgraded, then that's a lot of problems for the Germans to play hunt with. Spelt Great Bustard, spelt Bussard. Spelt Bustard, pronounced Bussard. As I remember, it looks like a turkey. It does look like a turkey. I think it's of a similar family, to my mind, but I'm not 100% sure. Japan was oddly convinced because we were already decided to give up the Philippines. We were not that interested in the Western Pacific. Knew there was already enough anti-colonial push. There are all sorts of issues going on there with the Japanese plan. Renan, how much height does fire controls remove displace? Superstructure compartments with a range clock seem very spacious. Okay, so there is both. Some bits are gone, but you also have to remember there's also space for a lot of people in there. Because you have to remember there's got to be a lot of human computing power in those facilities to man the computing the stations. And they've got to be able to move around, communicate, and talk. So that is one of the reasons for the space as well. Like, on the Washington Naval Treaty, I've been doing some reading. There were scaremongers in the cabinet at the time claiming that the US would claim back their loans with interest in full. Yes, there were some people in the cabinet who were claiming that, but they were again a minority. And most pointed out quite calmly that if the Americans did that, A, they'd have to find a clause which would make it legally enforceable. And if they didn't find a clause which would make it legally enforceable, therefore then the British could quite legally default on their loans. Because you have to remember, under British law and under international law and loans between countries, etc., even under American law, you cannot demand your loans back for no reason. You cannot just turn around and go, you have to pay your loan with full interest right now. You can demand the balance of the loan be repaid, as in the some of the content, but without full interest projected for the future. And honestly, if the Americans had demanded it, the British would probably just got loans from elsewhere. their own institutions were lending again, British banks would probably have lent to the government. And the colonial banks would have been lent to the British government to pay it back. So the British could have dealt with that if the Americans had. But also there's a quite real reason thing that if the Americans had done that, and even if it does reach its full extent and the British government pays it all back or defaults, then if the British government defaults and don't pay it back, then the Americans have just shot themselves in the foot and made a very powerful enemy. And they've also just done a massive disruption to the global economic system. Because you have to remember, at this time, the British are what are holding the global economic system together still. I know America comes to the fore, and especially during the interwar 1920s and 30s, they start to grow in power and magnitude, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and more important part of the global economy. And by the end of World War II, they are the biggest part of the world economy. And they are what holds it together. But the 1920s and 30s are a transition period. And doing anything of that nature would have seriously disrupted that transition. And whilst there are always scaremongers who don't actually read the small print and don't actually bother to learn the rules of contract law, etc., that apply in these cases, the vast majority of the cabinet did, and looked at them and told them idiots. Let's say, what duties would the outdated 4 Iron Dukes, 3, 9, and 11 King George V's, 4 Orions, Tiger, Queen Mary if she survived, and 2 Lions have done in 1920s before each retire if you don't have a treaty? Wandered around the world being the British warships. They'd have taken part in fleet exercises, they'd have done fleet reviews, they'd have done diplomatic visits, they'd have been stationed in various stations. Probably you'd have had a larger force based in the ocean. You might well have had the Free Fleet plan, which Jellicoe drew up, so the fleet based in the home waters, fleet based in the Mediterranean, fleet based in the Indian Ocean scenario going on. So they could well have formed part of that. Nicole Ross, was the assassination of Yamamoto detrimental or positive for the IJN? Half a dozen of one, 6 of the other. In many ways he was a spent force, but in many ways he was also the most unifying factor they had in their naval operations. And no one else would have a similar level of influence or power to control things as he had enjoyed. Up until basically the other Japanese admiral, who I did in my whole scenes, Chiefs of Staff of Navy's series, Axis Chiefs of Staff of Navy series, until the last Japanese admiral I did in that came to power. He's the next one who has that power. But most remember, he'd been Yamamoto's predecessor and had been Yamamoto's sponsor, and one of the reasons he was not left in charge of the Navy was because he was too powerful and scary for the army. Question for production side. What's the most annoying footage they've lost? I lost once the entire footage for the entire engine room of HMS Warrior. And I had to go back and redo it. So that's why the footage for Warrior engine room is entirely the bit of me talking to it. I have virtually no B-roll from it surviving. I had to go back and quickly do that when they'll public later on. Who should the Republic of China have gone to buy replacements for their obsolete Dingyan class ironclad battleships? Britain, they're the ones who can build them quickest and most easily. If Vanguard class of 6 being built instead of King George V, scrapping the Revenge class for their turrets, would this have been a viable, and what would the other names have been with using Vanguard as first letter? Well, they wouldn't have used Vanguard as their first letter. Vanguard originally was part of the St. Vincent class, which are part of the broader spin of Dreadnought and the Bellerophons. So you more than likely would have seen St. Vincent, Collingwood, and Vanguard, St. Vincent, Collingwood come back, and could well have seen Temeraire, Superb, Bellerophon, and that would be your 6. Possibly Dreadnought, but possibly not. Possibly Dreadnought. So you've got 7 names to pick from. And that would be where they come from. So that's the first actually generation of British battleships. So yeah, I was just pointing out that the chats there were still more idiots in the UK government in the 20s as well as the 30s. There are always idiots in every government. You can find them very easily. Usually just throw a ball and see whoever catches it. The odds are they'll be an idiot. The ones who duck and hide underneath the table, they're probably the smart ones. The ones who think, hang on, someone's chucking something grenade-shaped at a group of politicians. Duck! And they're probably the smarter ones. And yeah, they would have been useful. It would have been viable. It would have been interesting to see if how it would work. They would not have been Vanguard, as in Vanguard with its Mark 37 fire control directors and all those things. It would be a different ship, but yeah, it would have Vanguard, our starship. Yeah. Good luck, Rapper Roseback. Thanks for that. A random question on the whole front of calculation power. How useful was all the pre-existing naval distance calculation stuff when the Americans and Soviets decided to go to space? Range finding, computer sector. A lot of it was used. A lot of it was useful data. But it had to be modified, and sometimes some of the modifications were wrong because they were based on some very poor assumptions. But as we got better assumptions, they got improved. And Nicole Ross, the Great Depression does hit the US far worse than Europe. Yes. See well, Leslie. Well, I think you just said night, so I'm suggesting sleep well, Leslie Mitchell. Yeah, the US and UK, several people discussing atoms between the wars as well. Yeah, they had all sorts of things going on. Interesting nuclear development the British had going on. My turn. Could the fallout of an accidental explosion inside ours number 2 turret really have destroyed the US Navy? I doubt it would have destroyed the US Navy, but it would have destroyed a lot. Depending on what was in the turret at the time, and what went bang, it could have been very interesting for any ships nearby it, and any facilities where it was. No, let me just check my own Access series. Yeah. Something someone said the other day. They weren't quite sure how many wherever I have because I do have a lot of playlists. If you click on the playlist buttons, you'll find there are huge numbers of created playlists. It doesn't always show them all up, apparently. Not all of them. Admirals in command. Let's go to... Content. Playlists. Go all the way down. I've got... How many playlists have I got? Apparently I have more than 50 playlists. I have 63 playlists on this channel. So, yeah. There's a few sitting around there. And all are supposed to be publicly findable. Access Chiefs of Staff. Yeah. Mitsumasa Yonai. Not Genda, Mitsumasa Yonai. Probably the most powerful Japanese admiral of the interwar period, and the one who is called back to tell the Navy to surrender. He is called back by the Emperor because he's the only one who will get the Navy to surrender. He is the only one who is respected enough that the Navy will follow him when he tells them to. And he was also one of the ones who, prior to World War II, was going, this is stupid to do this. Dr. Clarke, more Beltran territory, but what should be done to prevent illegal salvage of low background steel? I'm going to leave that to bilge pumps because what I'm tempted to say is probably not sensible, and I wouldn't want Jamie listening in before I respond. Right, what about the one who says where in response? That one's worrying. So I've been trying to work it out. It's a British comment, jetliners don't crash 1954. And then up the ESD saying, trying to work out which one would fall victim to metal fatigue. Probably DC-8. Because if I remember correctly, a slightly thinner material than the Boeing 707, but I might be wrong. Because that's from memory. That is a very big question to answer, what the US military might look like without the Korean and Vietnam Wars. That would have meant a military which was entirely focused on the Cold War and on European war fighting. There'll be another Discord chat on Thursday. The lives will go up. The next lives are going to be up tomorrow. The vote for the July lives is going to go live tomorrow. Yeah. Drew mentioned you radiate steel. That is certainly an option. That is a kinder option than I would necessarily consider. Frank was on it. Using Google Earth and also linked from Wikipedia, if you could get a yacht and that underwater drone Jack mentioned, you'd be able to find Gurkha, Mashan, and Benowin. Oh yeah, trust me, I am looking at that yacht. I mean the UUV and the yacht. Yes. I am definitely going to be looking for it. There are things I could do with that. It would be fun. It would certainly be fun. Night Sailor, everyone. Why do people believe the British need the F-35A for the RAF and the F-35C for the RN when the F-35B is sufficient for its needs? Okay, so it's the old scenario where people are looking at what's the best F-35 for an Air Force. Well, it's the F-35A. It is. What's the best F-35 for a Navy? Well, the best as we've been over, what's the technologically best, the most capable aircraft you can get? Well, it's a Catabar carrier, i.e. catapults and barrier system recovery, and F-35C, isn't it? Because it's the longest range, most powerful aircraft. Yeah. However, that's asking what is the best equipment, not what is the best for you. And as I keep trying to point out, for Britain, an F-35B, a larger group of F-35Bs, is easier to maintain and sustain. And especially if we get LHDs to replace Albion and Bulwark, etc. And I know we're currently working with the Dutch on vessels, so the odds of that happening are going down by the minute. But maybe we can get something to replace Albion and Bulwark, and we can get something else to replace the Bay class, etc. And various other vessels. Maybe we can get it that way. But I would like an LHD style design to replace Albion and Bulwark, because we needed 2 more flight decks, and then that would give us 4 flight decks which would all operate F-35Bs. And that means you are, if push comes to shove and you have issues with both Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales, i.e. let's say one of them is in major refit and one of them gets damaged, then you are not without a flight deck to operate F-35Bs for air defence role, or even for strike role, should you need them for that. You won't have as many. It won't be as good as having one of those. But it's better to have 4 flight decks that you can use, of which 2 are great and 2 are okay, than have no flight decks. An okay flight deck is better than no flight deck. And that's far easier to achieve with F-35Bs. And that's what we need to do. Hi David Golden. Hi Doc. I have no problem with you. I've started drinking 1901. Oh, and have been come and support that. 1901 is good for you. It's very good for you. It's an expensive way to live, but it's good for you. Nicholas, would you get on a submarine with bungled cables all over the outside? No. There are many things which, in the nicest way... I had this conversation, and we had this conversation as a group of 4 of us when we were out in Australia. And it was basically the entire ship-shape room was saying, the trouble is, we all know far, far too much that when we're walking onto these things, we notice things and go, nope, nope, no, 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 I'm not getting on that. Not. But there's also the trouble is we also know which bits are likely to be strong and which bits aren't, which is one of the reasons why Drac will use his rock climbing skills to try and climb up the inside of Mars and things like that. Which he can do. But as they said on Haida, the trouble is not him doing it, the trouble is the people who will see him doing it and think they can do it as well. And they can't, because they don't have the rock climbing skill and the knowledge of the ship. And you need to combine those two to make that viable. And not end up falling down. Thank you, Verdun. You don't need to use uranium. There's all sorts of options. Dr. Dan came up with all sorts of options while we were out in Australia discussing those. I have studied what I've been able to get hold of, where the various organisations have allowed me to have access to the materials they have recovered and their data about what they recovered. I have had a look over it, but where they haven't, I have not been able to. And again, it's the old thing in academia. Some academics have been burnt so much by people stealing their data and publishing it before they could publish it that, frankly, they don't share anymore. And that's sad. But it is the problems of academia. No, sir, it is considered about how close HMS Illustrious came to turning Taranto into a far bigger issue for the Italian Navy. And it's one of those scenarios where if you'd had HMS Eagle had been working, or if HMS Glorious had been there, or if in a way, shape, or form, there'd been another carrier available for the Royal Navy to launch aircraft from at Taranto, the odds are the Italian Navy would have been knocked out of World War II. Literally, you can put it all down to the bomb damage which HMS Eagle has sustained earlier in the conflict over the previous month's operations. That it's a cumulative effect that the Italian Navy is not actually knocked out of the war like it's often claimed at Taranto. They weren't knocked out of the war at Taranto. They were seriously set back for a few months, but not knocked out of the war. And they were seriously set back by Matapan, but not knocked out of the war. That's always an important thing to point out. And the British at certain points were almost were set back at points by Italian victories in the Mediterranean. There were a couple of those, or near enough victories that they caused problems for the Royal Navy. But the thing is, it's a scenario you have to deal with. In that's war. A bit of luck the other way. Littorio goes boom, and a lot of people sadly die. A lot of people die. But the Italian Navy at that point is down multiple ships, of which they'll never get some of them back. And that's a problem for them. And if you had another carrier at Matapan, that could be multiple ships. As I've said before, Gillo de Cesare, basically, unless you've got 2 squadrons of Skua dive bombers, you ain't getting anywhere near it. So basically, you need Ark Royal to be there for Gillo de Cesare to be sunk. I only want to float around the world. Actually, though, that'd be interesting, because if Skua dive bombers had sunk the Cesare in Taranto, would the Skua be remembered as a terrible fighter, or would it be remembered as a good dive bomber? Would it have carried on being used as a dive bomber during the war, and maybe upgraded with a better engine? And would the British be famed as having a good dive bomber in World War II? That was an really interesting thing to go with. Trieste would be a modified Trieste would be a better choice for the LPD's replacements. So it would be a good idea if the UK invests in a land-based SAM system rather than relying on Type 45. Oh, we can always hope. But who will run it? And as for why Knights of Room, why is it overlooked that despite the Denmark Strait in the way it did, Hood and Prince of Wales ultimately not only succeeded in their mission but helped secure a long-term victory in Denmark Straits? Seems like Jutland in terms of outcome. Because it's contrary to the straightforward narrative. And because the straightforward, simple, immediate narrative often has a lot of sway over the final summation that you can, when you look at it through historical eyes and you look at it in history and go, what really happened there? There are all sorts of systems which are supposed to be land-based. So Calvin Gasberg, we ain't actually got any of them yet. We've got some versions of... We've got the Land Scepter, which the land-based version of... I think it's Sky Saber, is it? Or something like that. Which is the land version of Sea Scepter. But the Thing is, that's not an area air defense system. Dear Brooke, the Clarke, if Admiral Shear had been run down and sunk after the attack on convoy HX-84, would the Germans have delayed the cruise of Scharnhorst and Gneisenau and then sent them out in company with Bismarck and Prince Jürgen? Potentially. Honestly, that is what Lutyens would have preferred. Lutyens would have preferred a larger fleet formation. And that would have certainly been scarier for the British to deal with, but the British would then have had to concentrate their forces even more. So you would not have had Hood and Repulsor. If the British know that it's Bismarck, Scharnhorst, Gneisenau and Prince Jürgen out, then they are not going to be turning up to any battle with anything less than 4 capital ships. In which case you probably get King George V, Prince of Wales, Hood and Renown formed up as a group of 4. And you probably get a slow group. The Fast 4 would have one of the carriers with them, possibly Ark Royal, because she was with Renown and Sheffield, and so Force H could be tacked onto the fast ships. They'd have to be refueled at sea somehow, but they'd probably figure out a way to do that. They could do that. They did have it's more a case of having the actual fast oilers available to refuel them. That's the problem. But yeah, they could probably find they're knocking around, just not that many of them. So they could do that. I think there's one sitting in the Bristol Channel at that time from memory, so that could have been used. And you probably have to form a slow group based on Rodney. Is Nelson available? No, it'd probably have to be Rodney and Samar class. Maybe a Queen Elizabeth class is available. I think maybe Malaya is knocking around. So maybe Malaya, Rodney, and a couple of R class. Because let's be honest, that would not be a group which the Germans would want to get close to, because whilst they might have a chance in theory, the R class are more. If they are at the moment they're in range of those guns, they're going to get severe damaged. Runon, it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. They are low grade background on the steel, and they're also high quality. I'm not sure I get anything other than a Western Boomer or SSN. You can put me in a rocket, but it's almost easier to build a heat shield than dealing with the sea pressure. That is always a fun thing to point out to people. Who was the hardest, strong opponent for the Queen Elizabeth? The German fleet at Jutland or the Italian Navy at your choice of battle in the Mediterranean? Littorios are always a stronger opponent. They are a far more equivalent opponent than anything the Germans have at high sea. And the High Seas Fleet actually has at Jutland, and that's a point to remember. There is nothing really equivalent to the Queen Elizabeth's at Jutland. There is a reason why the German High Seas Fleet doesn't close really on the 5th Battle Squadron at the behind the battle cruisers. There is a reason why the Germans are held off by those ships. And it's because, in the nicest way, there is, unless they can bring them to battle with the full force, there is absolutely no point in them trying to charge ahead to fight them. There is nothing they have that will fight them, that they have that they want to fight them with. Whereas a Vittorio Veneto, those things on a good day, will go toe-to-toe with the Queen Elizabeth class. Yes, if it's Warspite, I'll put my money on Warspite. But, yeah, Queen Elizabeth Valiant, they put up fights. And I sort of, no, I doubt the Harrys have been retired so early if you hand me for the 2008 credit crunch. I was trying to. Have you got a chance to see the article on Wreck of HMS Ark Royal? I have seen the article, I haven't really read it. So, you've asked me when and why do you think her bow came off when she sunk. It depends on where she got the damage, and I need to study the article in far more detail before I started to espouse on that sort of thing. But I would agree, a structural failure after the impact and as she sank, and especially it could be to do with the pressure changes. For example, if there was an air pocket in the bow and the rest of the ship is taking on water, and yeah, there are issues. So it all depends on as she's going down, where the pressures are, where the air is, where the pockets are. Yeah, it happens. Right, how many 30 knot, 4 knot cruisers? I'm not seeing where Frank Bauer, where that starts from. What do we call UK GB cruisers? Seriously, like the way the UK used them. The USA Guadalcanal was such a mix of torpedoes, radar, and gunpowder. Guadalcanal was a mix-up of some very, very interesting American command decisions, and mainly it just. Let's put it this way: you have the fact that the Americans have 2 years more to prepare their forces technologically, but a lot of their admirals are so sure that the Japanese are not up to the same level as the Italians and the Germans in their fighting skills. They don't actually seem to have studied the war and learnt the lessons of what's happened in those 2 years of war. Icarus, could the Skuas have sunk a battleship with 500-pound bombs? The Guerre de Chesre, it would have been. Let's put it this way: this is the reason I said 2 squadrons. Because if you hit over roughly 20, if you manage 24, and considering a Skua's rate of hitting target, especially a stationary one, as Guerre de Chesre was, you might achieve as many as 18 500-pound bomb hits. The odds are they hit a couple of places where it might not be. It could be sunk, or it could be just functionally out of the war in terms of repair. Because 500-pound bombs, the odds are most are going to be aiming for roughly the centre of mass of the ship, so they're going to boom, 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 cause issues in that area. And if one of them penetrates the engineering spaces, you've got real trouble. And whilst they are semi-armor piercing bombs, it's kind of like shells. Yes, your armor will defeat the first semi-armor piercing bomb. Well, hey, what about a second? Probably. What about a third to hit that area? Unlikely. Fourth? Oh, sugar. Fifth? Oh, guacamole. And by that area, I'm talking about sort of a circumference area. Not a pinpoint that spot. If there are no ships at Brest because of planned Brest breakup with Bismarck, would trip the line forces instead of sitting off the French coast. Employed to exit of the Kattegat, meaning a higher chance of sub-interception. Potentially. Potentially. Jackery, hate to bother you. Your captain was wondering if having lucky interesting membership today, please. Oh, good lord.
Jack Ray, you are far too generous. And Melanie is still trying to work out whether she's going to get a membership. See, Clarke. I'm wrong. El Duce and Nazis had a hope in my train. El Duce and Nazis had a hope in my train. Get Malta, you you fools. Very more important to target for the Fallschirmjäger than Krieg. Yeah, but in nicest way, Malta would have massacred the Fallschirmjäger and they would never have got it. Because Crete, the problem was you kept having people change command. And you had a very sensible Royal Marine Major General who'd organise things, and then the army comes in and goes, well, we're more senior, we're more numerous, we'll take charge, and we're going to rewrite everything and reorganise everything. And that's fine, that's a prerogative. But they then didn't have enough time to get themselves sorted out. And you can understand why. The command structure and the things implemented by the Royal Marines suited the Royal Marines, not how the army would defend the island, how the Royal Marines would defend the island, or what their order of priorities in terms of defence of the island were. The army's order of priorities was slightly different. Not massively so, but enough to enough to move things around. But Malta has a very, very stable set of command, has a very interesting populace, and has a lot of fortifications. A lot of fortifications. I don't think the RAF didn't really want to get rid of the Joint Force Harrier, and there is a reason for this, because the RAF wanted to be in a club of operating free fast jets. They wanted to be able to replace the F-35, the Harriers with F-35Bs. They wanted to be able to replace the they replaced lots of things with the F-3s with Typhoons, and they wanted to make the case for replacing the Tornadoes. I forget, I think they were actually talking about F-35As or Typhoons for that replacement. And the trouble is, they've now gone down to a 2 fast jet force with just Typhoons and F-35Bs. So they would have liked to have more. Hello. Right. Thank you. If you want, you can take this back, because I'm just wrapping a book up and putting it in the freezer to get rid of kill mold.
Where in the freezer?
Somewhere on the top, please. But it's just going to be a book, so it'll be nice and flat. Hello, where is she? Now, if you don't have a Ziploc bag, doesn't matter. Believe it or not, you can get away without using a Ziploc bag if you're smart about how you bag it up. Huh? What are you saying, sis? I love you dearly, but I wish you'd remember you're speaking from the other side of a, piece of glass. So. No, I don't. Karen, unfortunately, don't take this the wrong way. And I know you expect me to have this perfect memory like Sheldon Cooper or something, but Nan did die when I was about 2. So, there you go. Double wrapped up. Should be okay. If it happens to end up in a third bag before it goes in, that might be good.
How How the hell am I going to get that?
Language! Don't use those words on live YouTube.
Sorry.
Little cousins are listening. Yes. Sisters. Terrible. Terrible. Never think they had the education they did have. Certainly not when they try and cook. Sorry. Winding up elder sister is always one of the benefits of life. Thanks, Potter. Yeah, the UK cruises were being very good. Frank Spanner, did the UK have any PT boats which got used against heavy ships? Yes, the dog boats and quite a few other boats did get used against heavy ships when they got given the opportunity. But the trouble is, and this is one of the problems that the Royal Navy constantly comes up with, their opponents have a lot less heavy ships than they do. This restricts opportunities. It's one of the interesting things when people go, well, you know, the Germans used this, and this against British heavy capital ships. Yes, because the British have about 3 times as many capital ships as the Germans do operating in total, and they usually have about 5 times as many operating at any one time as the Germans do. So yeah, there's a lot more opportunities for actually using that stuff. But when they do have the chance, the British do like to try and use them off the coast of Norway and various other things. They do like to try and use them for those sort of things. What could you mean when you clarify about what demand loans back? That was a question from earlier about the Americans, if they demanded loans back. Theoretically, you can withdraw. Theoretically, on certain grounds, you can demand your immediate repayment of a loan. But the basic grounds of immediate repayment of a loan for demanding are your belief that the person will soon not have the ability to repay it. Which is a very difficult thing to justify against the nation state. It's possible, but it's very difficult to justify against the nation state. Usually this ends up in a negotiation, but some people do not understand it. They see it as a political tool that you can demand as of when you need, and it doesn't work that way. I vote for you covering aircraft carriers next year. Also, would it be appropriate to say that carrier hulls are based on cruisers, and they're just larger versions of them? Honestly, it's battle cruisers. It's battle cruiser hulls. If you have a look at some of the shaping of battle cruiser hulls, and some of the early shapings of especially Ark Royal, but also the Illustrious class shape design, you can see a lot of battle cruiser shaping going on in their hull design. If you think about it, that's pretty much similar to what they need to be doing. They need to be stable ships. This is for aircraft launch rather than the gunnery, though. They need to be fast ships, and they need to also have good cruising speed. Again, it's a battlecruiser hull. HMS Verdun. I doubt Sir Keith Park would let Malta be invaded that easily by air. I won the Battle of Britain. I know it's more complicated still. Is a good argument for telling the defence, leading defence. Yeah. Colin Cameron. In Malta, the Fashamiga would have had casualties both the landscape and the cacti before defenders got a hold on. True, but I think there would have been a lot more defenders. But the trouble is also, if you remember when we talked about defence of Crete, how there hadn't been wires strung across the fields, all sorts of things that could have been done hadn't been done, that would have taken, which would have cost the lives of a lot of gliders. That had been done on a lot of the fields of Malta. In fact, pretty much all of them had been turned into things where if you tried to land in a glider, you would kill everyone, and even parachutists. And added to that, the airfields, unlike Crete, were quite heavily fortified. There were usually large numbers of people on them who had guns and were prepared to were dug into defensive positions to go, "Hello, you'd like this airfield? Well, that's fine. We're going to give you a nice hello in terms of hello. Have you seen our trench lines? And have you seen our concrete pillboxes? And have you seen the fact we've got a lot of heavy machine guns? Good. Have you met our Matilda tanks? And armoured cars, and various other things they had. Matilda tanks I'm never quite sure of. I've read various things some which say they had a couple knocking around, some which say they didn't. It's one of those things where I would not be surprised if a couple had found their way to Malta, but I have a feeling they'd have been Matilda 1s rather than 2s. But either way, they would not have been a pleasant surprise for any parachutists or Fallschirmjäger. And you don't not just need to take 2 of the airfields, you need to take and hold the 2 airfields. And even then, you then need to try and get more troops there by sea. And there is only really one place you can land personnel in sufficient numbers and heavy equipment. And that's another problem in Malta. Oh, the Axis knew how important Crete was. They just how important Malta was. They just had no ability to actually take it after they'd done Crete, and they didn't really have much ability to take it before they'd done Crete. I've said really as much as I'd like to on the recent diving expedition. I'll probably get more into it on bilge pumps. Good night. Oh, I'm off to celebrate the anniversary of my nation storming out of Mum's house in a huff. It happens. Enjoy. Take care, Tanef. I'm not sure who claims the British didn't build another carrier until 1951. But yeah, just don't. In the nicest way, there's all sorts of things people put out there on the internet. And they're both right and wrong, usually. They're right if you try and look at the evidence from a very specific angle under a very specific light. But then when you look at it in any sort of context and nuance, they're wrong. As I was saying, Matilda 1s will still make a mincemeat of lightly armed paratroopers armed with cars and grenades. Yes, and Matilda 1s turn up in all sorts of weird places, so I'm never quite sure. Matilda 1s are interesting vehicles. The British, they turn up all sorts of places during World War II. Take care, Frank. No FG-42 in 1942. Yeah. Excellent. The Grand Hammer of Valletta? The Multons might bring out the old 100 cannons before they let you take it. Oh, we suddenly found ammo for the old 19th century 100-ton guns. How inconvenient for you. Yeah, that would be fun. Right, I've barely made a start on the books tonight, but thank you for tolerating that, because honestly my brain is not still fully active. It will be back, hopefully after tonight's, well, I might even have a bit of a snooze. But I think I am going to finish it there for tonight. I do apologise, I'm finishing a little bit earlier than I normally do, but yeah. I'm going to go rest, play with the fluffs. See that people build carriers on a battlecruiser hull, unless you are French, German or Italian. The British also build an aircraft carrier on HMS Eagle, so they also do a battleship hull. The British do both. Was it possible? Well, it's potentially possible that Fisher could decide to get all 6 Queen Elizabeths and 8 R's. But as I've said before, I'm highly dubious about HMS Agincourt being a stock build Queen Elizabeth class, and I'm tremendously dubious. I think with the renowns, I think more interesting thing would be get the ape ship as the 3rd renown class. And I think you could have ended up with 3 renowns and HMS Hood. And I think that would make a more interesting, compelling scenario for the British, because the British would then possibly, especially towards the London Treaty, they might still let go of Tiger, but they probably would not want to lose any of their 15-inch gunships. So they'd probably still go, right then, we're going to keep the 5 Queens, the 5 R's, the 3 Renowns, and Hood, and Nelson and Rodney. And if you put that together, you have 16 capital ships. And then the British will sort of... that's a very interesting scenario to be in going into the construction period, because you probably keep all those ships, and have all those ships World War II, and having a 3rd R-class battlecruiser, so having 4 battlecruisers, 4 fast capital ships going into World War II, that can change things quite dramatically. Even if it's unmodernized, even if it's like Repulse. But the thing is, if you have 4 of such vessels, the odds are you've modernized 1 or more of them. And that has an impact on things. It does have an impact when you have those. When you have, let's see. If you do have HMS Resistance as your 3rd renowned class battlecruiser, you have HMS Resistance out there as well. Let's say you get 2 of the vessels modernized. Let's say it's Renown and Resistance, because again, the reason being is Hood and Repulse, because of their Empire trips, they've been out. The timeline doesn't work so well for them, so you put Resistance on the same timeline as Renown. She probably gets modernized. Again, Renown was easier to modernize than a Queen Elizabeth class, so they probably still do the Queen Elizabeth, but Resistance is extra. You have an extra modernized Renown wandering around World War II. You put that into the war games, things get very interesting very quickly. Because sometimes the best situation might be to have both of them wandering around. And that changes things. Because if you have Renown and Resistance hunting down Gneisenau and Scharnhorst at that battle, well, you think about it, you suddenly go from having 4 15-inch guns ranging on them, the forward and occasionally the aft, to having 8 and occasionally 12 15-inch guns. That has an impact, and if you even only include the increased number of hits by 50%, the odds are one of them gets slowed down enough it turns into a fight. A fight which might be actually finished by destroyers coming up while the other 2 chase the remaining Scharnhorst and remaining probably Scharnhorst trying to run away. It's a really, really interesting cumulative effect. It's one of those things which goes up there with HMS Courageous not getting sunk, or HMS Royal Oak not getting sunk. And again, both of those scenarios can be dealt with by just building some more sloops. So you'd have more escorts wandering around. You'd have probably, if you'd built more of the smaller sloops, you'd have had a couple. If you'd built, and this is a Fisher class instead of, you know, if you built six, if you build another couple of those, the smaller sloop, you'd have probably had one of them, a couple of them sitting wandering around Scarpa Flow, and that would probably have made actually the entrance into Scarpa Flow very, very difficult to nigh on impossible. And which might well have meant that Royal Oak doesn't get sunk, which would be interesting especially in later part of World War II, but even quite interesting in the beginning in the convoy escort, because that's an extra R class for convoys. And that's going to have an impact on how many convoys get covered, because it's cumulative. Again, if you have another R-Class taking part in the convoy coverage, going backwards and forwards with the convoys, that's another convoy which has got an R-Class presence with it. Which is another convoy which Shanos, Gneisenau, none of them, or anything below them, wants to go anywhere near. And not even Bismarck and Tirpitz would really want to go near that convoy, because whilst they'll win the fight, and I'm not going to say they're not going to win the fight, they're going to get damaged. And if they get damaged, they have to go home. So you skip the convoy which has the 15-inch battleship with it. You leave that to the submarines. You guide the submarines in and tell them to fight it. You don't go in and fight it, because you'll get damaged. Royal Navy sloops from World War II. Kingfisher class. Kingfisher. I know I said Fisher. Kingfisher class. Sorry. Kingfisher class. 9 ships, 1934 to 1939 they were built. If you built 12 of those, that would have probably stopped losses. And if you built more of the Bittons, the Egrets, and the Shorehams, and possibly more of the Hastings and Bridgewaters, if you'd built 6, 6, 12, 6, no, 6, 6, 12, 12, 12, 6, and 6, you'd be amazed at how different World War II would have, the initial advance of World War II would turn out. Because you go from having 14, 22, 31, 37 to having 12, 24, 36, 48, 60. An extra 23 sloops, which is not a lot of personnel and not a lot of money in Royal Navy budget terms, but that would have made given you an extra 23 ships available for doing things like convoy escort, for doing things like protection, working with your HMS Courageous when it's doing anti-submarine warfare operations, and for securing Scapa Flow. And that will have a positive impact and build-up. You probably also have ordered 12 of the Black Swan class, original ones, and then you'd ordered more. You probably still ordered the 30 plus modified Black Swans, but you know that would have made a big difference again to your numbers. There isn't really a good book on the R class. Do all carriers maintain a battlecruiser hull form World War II? If you have a look at them, and I would argue, especially if you look at the American and British ones, they definitely do have a battlecruiser hull form going on. And I would argue today, even if you look at HMS the Queen Elizabeth class, the modern Queen Elizabeth class, have a real look at that hull form. and think about how a battlecruiser hull form might have evolved if it was still going around to this day. It's an interesting idea to think about. Nice one. Do you think the RM would have, if they had a choice, traded 136 Blackburn Rocks for 136 Sea Hurricanes? In a shot. In fact, they wouldn't have even thought about it. Not excited necessarily for the next Doom movie. I'm looking forward to to actually seeing the next Indiana Jones. I haven't managed to see it yet. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Hope you enjoyed. And yeah, sorry not getting through much books, but you know, I did do a discussion of book preservation, so I hope that makes up for it a bit. And also, by the time you next see me, I will have fixed the ring light. Take care, everyone. I think it's still working. I haven't seen any any chats come through since Frank Spartow's at 10:16, so I'm not sure. Maybe my chat's gone wrong, because normally it doesn't go 20 minutes without chats coming through. Ah! It's just not been updating, because Nicole Ross at 10:20 has just appeared. But what hull form was Unicorn? Think County class / battle cruiser. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Yeah, they're all coming in now listed as 10:21, and for me the time is... Oh, it is, right. Sorry. For some reason there's a difference between the clocks going on. I've got 03:28 above me, and I've got 21 down here. Oh well. So, thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you, Grace Husky, Joss Funk, Carl Magasmo, Paul Bestwick, Albert Zaski, Stafford Thompson. Thank you, Nicole Ross. Thank you, Frank Sparto. Thank you, Frank Barnwell. Thank you, Renown 1916. Renown 16. It was very nice meeting you guys. I was the wee lad at HMAS Castlemaine. Thank you. It's nice to see you. Nice to see you here. I hope you enjoyed meeting us. Thank you, Knight6831. Thank you, DG40. Thank you, Colin Cameron. Steve Clarke. Thank you. David Goulding. Thank you. And thank you, Albert Zaski. Thank you, HMS for Dunn. Thank you, Tanner Verka. Knight6831. Thank you, Colin Cameron. Thank you, Duke of Petchington. Thank you, Stafford. Thank you, Stafford, Melanie, and Dan, and Jack, who've all been on adminning. Thank you. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you, Melanie1640, I think, and who's also been on adminning. Thank you. Thank you, Rapper is back. Thank you, Leslie Mitchell. Thank you, everyone who's been on Zoom. Drakenred, Just Vonk. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen Richards. Thank you, everyone, basically, who's been on and who's been chatting away. Thank you very much. And take care. Thank you, Deborah. Everyone's letting me go to bed. Yeah, but, you know, let's check it was still working. Take care, everyone. Toodles, and see you on Thursday. And I will be posting all the things and set everything up tomorrow. Take care, and again, basically, I will say... I will make the video, the questions, I will put the questions together and they will go live tomorrow at 7. So, if people have till lunchtime UK time, so that's about roughly another 13.5 hours. If in the next 13.5 hours you come up with ideas you want to put into the July topics for the patron suggestions and patron vote, if you go and add them to the page on Patreon, they will be put forward for the vote. Thank you very much, Aaron, and take care. Take care now. Thank you, Concentracinus. Take care.